first by saying thank you to you as a teacher. I feel like teachers are the superheroes of modern day life because you guys go above and beyond to help our students. You have, to me, the biggest impact on students outside of their families. You are with them 8 hours. Teachers are with students like 8 hours of the day, and y'all really have an impact on how they become adults. So I really want to say thank you for what you do, and you guys go above and beyond, and you guys should be paid a lot more. So I just want to say all that, and thank you for sitting down to this interview with me because I really appreciate it. And so today I have Darien, Jacobs, Looney Tunes. We go back to fifth grade, Miss Rich's class, when we were both taller than the teacher. We played basketball together for fifth grade until we graduated high school. However many field trips, adolescent love drama, like me and Darien go way back.
Oh man, now I'm reminiscing. Oh goodness, yes.
From military families, both have the same barber, like a lot of the same stuff. AAU basketball tournaments, parents bringing snacks, like all of the stuff that you can remember as a childhood athlete.
Yeah.
And Darien also is former military, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm still in the Guard, so I still 1 week in a month, 15 days in the summer, that whole spiel. That's what I do.
Also, thank you for your service
Well,
our country.
thanks for your support. Appreciate all of it.
And so, how have you been, Darien? How have you been?
Overall, I mean, I've been good. Obviously, I think if you ask anyone, though, once you get to a deeper level of how they've been during this whole time, it hasn't been the best. But I've taken this unfortunate situation that we're all in and tried my best to, make do with it and make the best out of it that I can. And so, obviously, when I'm talking about situation, I mean the pandemic in general. Going back to last March, which is it's kind of crazy because we're coming up on a year of all of this. So yeah, the past year has been obviously ups and downs, like with everyone. But I got to say, overall, I've been very blessed. And so, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how have I been? I would say a solid 7. 10 being great, 1 being obviously the lowest of low. I'd say a 7.
Okay, that's not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, I won't make you think worse of a number after we answer some of these questions. What I did forget to say that Darien is a high school teacher and girls lacrosse and girls basketball coach. I left that part out. So Darien is in the high school space dealing with adolescents, and from other interviews, I've learned that high schoolers might not be the easiest to work with during COVID. So I'm interested to dig in to see how your experiences has been. But first, I want to ask you, how did you become a teacher? Like, what influenced you to become a teacher? From what I remember, you were in the military before. Military is involved, and now you're a teacher. So, like, what was your influence to move to the teaching space?
All right, so let's see if I can make this as quick as possible. Obviously, and you know me, you just gave the whole spiel on how long you know me. Ever since you know me, ever since I can even remember, I've always enjoyed, helping out our peers. Whether it's been relationship advice or whether it's just been advice about just personal life or what to do, any sort of guidance. And so because of that, and because I was always interested, even from a young age, in human behavior, and then what goes on inside the mind, I always thought I wanted to be a psychologist. And, I think up until I would say our junior year is when I kind of made the shift. And it's because I took a visit to SIUC, Carbondale. And, I got some really good advice from one of the academic advisors. And essentially, I explained to her what my passions were and how I wanted to help people. And I told I told her that I want to work with adolescents in particular. And then she told me, oh, okay, so you kind of want to be a counselor. And I was like, well, yeah, counseling is probably second on my list, but I definitely want to be a psychologist. And she was like, all right, well, in order to do what you're wanting to do, you're going to have to go to school for about 8 years. And obviously, as a junior in high school, you hear that and you're like, oh, wait, I don't want to have to go to school for 8 years to get my doctorate in psychology. So I said, all right, maybe I'll do counseling. I'm like, all right, that's great. You seem like you make a great counselor is what she told me. And then she was like, but we don't have a counseling program here. So I was like, okay, well, I guess third, what I would want to do is, since I really want to work with high school kids or middle school kids, essentially adolescents, I guess teacher maybe. And she was like, I think you'd make a great teacher. And I don't know if she said that just because she was trying to sell me on the school or she really meant it. But that kind of sparked my interest in being a teacher and looking more into it. And again, this is junior year. And then senior year, I thought I was going to go down the teacher path. So we actually had a club at O'Fallon called FEA, if I remember correctly. It's been so long. And Miss Boggs was the sponsor of it. And I joined that club and I got to shadow some teachers, and in particular, some health teachers, because I thought I was going to be a health PE teacher. And I remember I went to Muscuda High School and I got to shadow their health teacher. And the first thing I saw was that being a health teacher, doing freshman health, which is what I do now, I was like, man, I sat through 8 hours of this guy saying the same exact thing every period. And I was like, oh my God, this guy has to go insane. I don't know if I could do this. But then after I got to college, which wasn't SIU by the way, it was Illinois State, which has a phenomenal education program. And I really dove into the health education major. I grew to love it. And essentially, I am doing everything that I wanted to do since fifth grade, with working with adolescents and helping them out, getting their life on the right track. And I'm glad I went the teacher route as opposed to the school counselor or even school psychologist route, which is school psychologists are very rare to find. Those jobs are hard to get, just because I'm on the front line in a way. I see the students that come to my classroom first. There are so many students that I talk to that don't even know who their guidance counselor is. So usually, and especially with the subject that I teach, if students are having issues, whether it's regarding their mental health, their social health, relationships, whatever's going on at home, they tend to come to me first because those are all topics that we talk about. So essentially, I have my dream job.
Nice. Okay. And how long have you been teaching so far?
So this is my third year at West, doing high school. Before West, I was in Clayton, Missouri. I was at their middle school, and I wasn't a teacher actually. I was a middle school athletic director, which was that was a pretty sweet gig. not gonna lie. So when I was in Clayton before, I came to West, I did middle school athletics. I was a eighth grade boys basketball coach and the assistant high school girls lacrosse coach, and I really enjoyed my time in that district. Miss it, but we moved back to Illinois, so I had to find a job in Illinois. So before that, I was a teacher's aide in Webster Grove. I do everything by school year. So the school year before the 2016-2017 school year, yes, I was a teacher's aide in Webster Grove and an assistant high school girls lacrosse coach out in Parkway West in Missouri. So I was in Missouri. Before that, 2015, 2016, I did a long-term sub up in northern Illinois at Round Lake. Round Lake, it's probably about, I don't know, 5 minutes south of Wisconsin, so I was way up there. Basically in Wisconsin. Most of the teachers were from Wisconsin. So I did that in 2016, did PE and health. And so all the way back to 2016, I guess, I've been in the school in some sort of capacity.
Got you. So I have two questions. One, when you're close to Wisconsin, how did they say the word bagel?
I don't even remember, actually.
A basketball coach in college who said bagel, and we all looked at him like, no, that is not how you say that word.
No, I don't see. I don't think so, because what's weird about that area is you had people that came from Wisconsin, but they were, Illinoisans or whatever still. There are people that moved from, the Chicago suburbs to Wisconsin, close to that borderline. So I think they were still Chicagoans at heart. So I think I heard a lot of bagels. And the reason why I say that is because I don't recall hearing any bagels. Either that or I just wasn't paying attention.
Okay. And just in case people aren't understanding the location where Darien currently is, it is in the St. Louis Metro East area. So I know we were like saying Clayton and Webster Groves and West, and like, if you don't know St. Louis, you're probably like, what are these cities? So basically, the Metro East area.
Absolutely. So anyone watching this from anywhere outside of the Metro East area has no clue what I just said and has no idea what the school districts are like that I just mentioned. So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up.
Because I had forgot to mention when I mentioned that you're teaching high school in the region. But so you're teaching this semester. Is it virtual? Is it in person? Is it hybrid? Like, what's the mode of teaching this semester for you, or last semester?
All right. So this is what happened to start out with, and every district was a little different in the area. So especially for those of you, those are the people that are watching that went to school with us. They understand, the different schools in the area, O'Fallon, Edwardsville, Belleville. There was some confusion, but I do know for a fact that the week before school was supposed to start, we were planning on coming back. A-B schedule. So half the students come in on one day, half the students come in on another day, 5 days a week. That was our plan essentially. And, that was a plan that personally I was okay with. I liked it. And then at the last second, we got word that we shouldn't start. So to begin the year, we started fully remote, which is tough. It's very tough for a teacher like me because I'm just not the same over the computer. And you kind of have to know me to get me and to get my jokes and whatnot. And over the screen, it's just not the same. So for about the first few weeks, I think it was 6 weeks or so, 5 or 6 weeks, students were probably like, man, this guy's a jerk and he's so dry and he's so boring, just because of my sense of humor and my sarcasm. So I think I went from being probably one of the most hated teachers during this time to one of the most liked in regard to and not just because of me personally, but because of the subject I teach. And being a health teacher is a little bit more laid back environment too. And we get to have more discussions. So I think that's one thing that draws students to health. A lot of classes, they're similar to college classes where you talk the whole time and you have a discussion and an open, honest discussion and dialogue. And I think students really like that. And so I guess that's not really a testament to me. It's just to the subject. I think anyone could come in and, facilitate a conversation. You could come into my health classroom, facilitate a conversation. The students would love you. So that wasn't me trying to toot my own horn or anything. But it was very tough doing the full remote thing. So then we went to a hybrid, A day, B day, which I liked. I thought it was the best we could do given the circumstances. And then toward the end, right before Thanksgiving break, it kind of felt like the rug was pulled from underneath us because then we went back to full remote. The only good thing about that second time going full remote is that the students already knew me. So it was easier to communicate with them. They felt a lot more comfortable getting on individual meetings with me and asking for help. Because the thing is, unlike the middle schools or the elementary schools, because I have elementary friends that are elementary teacher friends, where they're required to be on, from this time to this time with their students, we weren't required to do that. So a lot of the work that the students did was independent. We had a few synchronous days where we were required to meet with our classes at a certain time, but there was only 6. So it wasn't every day, every week. So it was a little tougher just to see the students because not everyone would sign on to those meetings. But again, I think the fact that we were back at school made it a lot better. And the students knew me and the students would actually log on to their meetings with me. The majority of them did it. And it was kind of funny because I would check attendance for students and I would see that they were absent for certain meetings with certain classes, but then they were present for mine. So that felt kind of good too, not going to lie.
Like, ooh, sorry that didn't show up to your class, but they're at mine. So it kind of was like college in that you kind of gave students a free will to decide. I mean, in my college, you had to be in class. You only got 3 absences, but it's kind of the mindset of like, you can come to class or not, but you still have to do the work. And so we're not going to penalize you. And I feel like that kind of gets them prepared for college. Also, you should go to class, but we know not everybody goes to class in college.
Well, exactly. It does, in a way. It kind of teaches them responsibility. And, for me personally, I think that's one of the biggest things we can teach students, no matter what subject you teach, is responsibility. I tell students all the time, some work that you do in here might not be for a grade, but that does not mean it's not important. Because I think, and you might remember this too, but I feel like growing up, grades were important and that was all that mattered. And true education wasn't what mattered, all right? It was just, all right, did I get an A? Did I get a B? Did I get a C? If I got a C, oh my God, I'm in trouble then. At least for us. So, I know you were a straight A student, I think, if I remember correctly. You were pretty close. You were up there, and I was a solid A/B student. I think I got 1 C in high school. So I I think for students like us, individuals like us, yeah, high school can be easy because yes, we're conditioned. We listen and we show up. We listen, do the work. We're not a nuance in class or a nuisance in class, and it's easy for students like us. And luckily for individuals like us, we have strong supporting systems at home. So we were taught that responsibility at home. But I think for a lot of students, they don't get that sense of being resilient, being responsible taught to them at home. So I do feel like as educators, we need to shift from just focusing on the grades of the students and seeing what can we do to impact their lives. And I think this is one thing. I mean, this is tough, but I praise the students that show up to our Google meetings because I said, hey, you completed step one, which is showing up. And that's typically the hardest step. And that's one thing you're going to learn in life is the hardest thing to do is to show up. And once you get there, you're into it, it gets easier. And so I would always applaud my students and congratulate them for just showing up, which I think is a good life lesson.
So you actually just touched on something I want to ask you about, and just having that parental involvement and support. How are you able to, well, you work in high schools, did you need to build a relationship with the families as well, or just the students? And how has, if so, how has the parental involvement been for you?
So let me think on multiple levels. Let's just talk about my students first, students that I have, because there's a difference between students that I have and then the athletes that I have, and then the student athletes that I have. So the athletes that I have that are in my class. Um, as far as parental involvement, I don't know if it's because it's health and it's not like a class like math. Um, and I think that one of the biggest misconceptions of health is that it's just an extension of PE. I don't really get a lot of interaction with the parents unless it's me reaching out to them. Um, just to give you a brief overview or just an idea, for parent-teacher conferences, the parents that come to me are the parents whose students have all A's and they have an AMI class. And they're the parents that, they're doing all the right things. And obviously they're doing all the right things because they show up. So the majority of the parents as far as students that I interact with are the students or are the parents of the students that are doing very well in class. When I reach out to parents parents of students who aren't doing that well, it's really tough to get a hold of them. A lot of times, and this is just personally from my experience here at West, I'll send an email and then to the email that's listed online for the student for the parent or guardian, and it'll say it's not a valid email. I'll get the response back, and then I'll call home. A lot of times the number will be disconnected. So usually in that situation, though, I've been fortunate to be able to build rapport with those kinds of students and get them to, at least do the work in my class. Now, when I was in Clayton, and again, different demographic, different dynamic, and if for those of you that aren't from, again, the Metro East area, just Google Clayton, School District of Clayton, and you'll understand. I had no issues with the parents and interacting with the parents there, both with the students and the players I coached. That's just my spiel on just the students at West. As far as the players that I coach, I have great communication with their parents. And again, it's a little different though. Because obviously when you are a coach and you obviously being an athlete, you understand this too. That relationship between the parent and the coach, the player and the coach, even the student athlete and the coach is a little different. And so you see the parents more, you see the players more. So I guess that would be my experience with communication with parents at West, at least.
Gotcha. And so, second more questions. With your working with parents, working with students, have you experienced any or witnessed any students who are struggling financially because their parents might be out of work? And are there resources that West is offering for students and families that have that issue? Because we know a lot of people lost jobs because of the pandemic.
Yes, I've witnessed that a lot. And even before the pandemic, just with students who were struggling financially, West has done a lot, or the District of Belleville, both East and West. They do a lot for those families, and it's kind of great to see, especially obviously growing up. We grew up in O'Fallon, so what we knew about West or Belleville was just our friends that went there. And that's about it. We didn't know much about the teachers or the district or, the foundation, what was going on. And so being back in the area and seeing all that West does for its community, or District 201, because it's both schools, East and West again. Uh, I'm very, very happy to see that. They're very supportive. They're very aware too. At least with the counselors and the assistant principals, they're always in the know. So if there's a family that's struggling, um, they have a list and they're always sending emails about just in regards to what can we donate or what can we give, especially during this holiday season. I know that my lacrosse team, we did a fundraiser for pies, and Eckert's gave us about 6 extra pies. So I was able to reach out to the counselors, give those extra pies to the counselors, and they were able to give them out to families that were looking for food for Thanksgiving. So there's stuff like that. One thing that District 201 has done that I think is amazing is they have these Wi-Fi buses. So they go to neighborhoods for students that don't have Wi-Fi to do this online learning. And they're park those buses in those communities and set up free Wi-Fi hotspots for those students. They've been providing students during this whole pandemic, during remote learning with lunches. So, which is, I think, is pretty cool too. And then also they've been able to give every student a Chromebook. So obviously not every student has a laptop. So the district bought a lot more Chromebooks, laptops for the students. So every student's been able to get a laptop. So just recently, I think the district has gone above and beyond to support the students and the needs of the students. And the list goes on. I could talk about other things that the district's doing that's really great. But I'll just leave it there because there's many other things I could tell you.
I mean, you hit on a point, like, as kids, we don't really ever think about, I lived in Belleville before I moved to O'Fallon, but like I was like below 10 years old. So what do I know about any of this?
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that Belleville, because you saying that every student has a Chromebook is crazy, because West and East are massive compared to where we went to high school, at least in my imagination. I imagine they're much bigger.
Yeah, they are.
And go ahead.
Probably double. O'Fallon's growing too. Like it's going crazy, but still, I would say the District 201 is still about double the size of O'Fallon's high school district at this point now, because there's like about 21,000 kids, 2,100, sorry, 2,100 kids at each campus, whereas O'Fallon I think has about 2,600 total. So I mean, almost double.
Technically 2 schools, so.
But I think that's combined with the.
I mean, they're not in the same building. You have
right.
A freshman center and.
Right.
We won't get into that. But that Wi-Fi bus idea sounds like that's something like I've been looking around, like seeing what schools are doing, and I work in higher education access. But that's like I haven't heard of that, and that seems like an amazing idea to. As opposed to like having to depend on Verizon to give out free Wi-Fi or whatever company, you just have the bus to drive around and spit out Wi-Fi to everybody. So that's pretty dope.
Yeah, I know.
And so I wanted to ask you about your in-person, because you've had to do both. So like, what are some in-person teaching methods that you've had to adapt to virtual learning?
So I would say that. So you're saying like, what did I have to take from in-person to virtual learning?
Yeah, what did you have to like adapt and make work, and what did you just say, I can't do this because it's not even possible?
I think with virtual learning, so let's talk about the 2 areas of virtual learning, the 2 times that we did virtual learning. It was very tough at the beginning of the semester because students weren't as motivated, and especially the freshmen. And the reason why, just to give you some background, is these freshmen that I had as 8th graders, last year when the whole pandemic started and we went to full virtual learning, the students found out that what they were doing wasn't really, it couldn't hurt them, essentially, if that makes sense. Something went around and the students found out that the grades that they're getting can't hurt them. So essentially, to give you an example, there were 8th graders that had A's, and once we went full virtual learning, they just didn't do any work and they kept their A, if that makes sense. There were students that were failing and they got their grade up to about a D or a C. And then once they did that, they stopped doing work, essentially. So the whole message that was promulgated last year for virtual learning, at least in our feeder schools and even at our high school, is that this virtual learning can only help you. It can't hurt you. Okay. And so a lot of the eighth graders brought that mentality into high school when that changed. That changed a lot, actually. So I think the biggest thing with getting students online with the virtual learning or in track with the virtual learning would be I had to be very, very flexible, because I would have students who wouldn't turn in assignments and they had the mindset, well, you can't fail me. But obviously, since we've already done this, this wasn't our first rodeo. The rules changed. And so now we could fail students during virtual learning. So I had to emphasize to a lot of students that, hey, you got to do your work. Please do your work, or else you will fail, or you're liable to fail. And I had to be very flexible with makeup work. One thing that was very chaotic is that we would have students move in and out of our class or shift classes all the time. So then you had to go back and find their grade from the other health class or from when they transferred, because we'd have transfers come from like Collinsville or whatnot. And so you had to like do research and find their grade. So that was tough. I think, but again, the biggest thing that I had to change on is I had to be a lot more flexible with deadlines and due dates, which personally killed me, because if you go back to what we were talking about earlier, that whole responsibility thing, I do feel like when we push back deadlines, due dates, and don't give students firm structure, we're kind of doing them a disservice. And again, we're not fully teaching them responsibility skills. And so because of that, I had students turn in stuff from like the first few weeks of school during the last week of school, and I still accepted it. And I do get it. It's chaotic. A lot of students still have no clue what's going on. So, I mean, I understand that. But I think that's the biggest change I had to make, is being a lot more flexible.
Gotcha. I feel like you hit on a few things, like when you said students are transferring in, like even though it's a pandemic, families are still living life. Like students still have to, people are still moving, people are still like getting new jobs or possibly losing jobs, need to move in with families. So like you're going to get those transfer students. So like that's an added or a consistent thing that's happened over the years, but like add that on top of the pandemic also makes it more difficult. And then just being flexible, which I think is super great, because who knows what's going on at home now, that people might be at work, they might have their little brothers or sisters at home they have to watch, and then some students just don't do their work. I mean, that's always the case. I mean, if you told me grades didn't matter when I was in school, I probably would have not done as well. So I definitely get like having to flip that message, like, look, I don't want to fail you, but you can still fail. Like this is not last semester. You have to actually do your work. So definitely get that. And so I kind of want to understand, like, you discussed a little bit about the students, like, don't have to come to meetings, they do come to meetings if they want to. And so how do you take attendance? Is there an attendance record? Like, how does that work with the virtual side of your teaching?
So for us, when we went back to full remote, and we would have our synchronous days, meaning the days that we would have our meetings with our students. So I'd have 5 meetings for my 5 class periods at a scheduled time for each period. What I did is, so students, we took attendance for the meeting. And the cool thing about using Google Hangouts, or Google Meets, excuse me, it was Google Meets. After the meeting ended, we automatically got an email back of all the students that attended. So it wasn't like I had to, sit there and say, all right, go down the list. All right, you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here, you're here. No, after the meeting ended, I got an email and it showed me all the students that were present for the meeting. Again, since this was such a tough time and confusing time and chaotic time for the freshmen, what I did was I posed the meetings as extra credit opportunities. Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to penalize students for not making it. And again, that's just kind of the whole situation we're in personally. Did I want to do that? No, because I think, hey, all you got to do is get on your computer and log in for the meeting. So I think it should be no issue at all. But I know I would still have students that wouldn't show up, and then I have to give them zeros for the meeting. And I didn't want to do that. And so I offered it as extra credit. And so that got the majority of the students to show up. And I think one thing that helped too is just being understanding of, some of the students' backgrounds and home lives. And I told them, your screen doesn't have to be on. I mean, that was a lot of controversy among teachers all across the nation. Should screens be on? Should they not be on? And every teacher has a different take on it. And even teachers within West would probably have a different take on it. And they would say, no, screens have to be on. But I said the screens didn't have to be on. And again, that also drew a lot of students to logging in to the meetings and listening. And because I knew students probably wouldn't be in the most talkative mood or whatever, a lot of my virtual learning, I made it lecture based, and then they had questions over it after, or they could ask questions during the lecture if they wanted to. But I never came to the meetings expecting the students to want to interact, or else it would have been a very dry meeting. So I made it on topics that were interesting to the students and topics that the students would want to ask more questions about, if that makes sense.
Got you. So you're doing lectures, they're not obligated to be there and they don't have to participate. And so when they say a student doesn't come to the meeting, how do they, were the meetings recorded to where they could listen to them, or or just read chapter 5? And that's, because I feel like in high school, a lot of times, like, you just read the chapter, you'll kind of get it for the most part. So was it kind of like, based on here's the chapters what we're doing today, here's the homework, you can come to the meeting, or you can just do the homework? Was there like, I feel like I'm making this a very long question, so I'm gonna stop and restart. Were the meetings recorded, one, and two, were there other access points to you or to material outside of the textbook when it wasn't meeting time?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, the meetings were recorded. The funny thing is, and the thing I like about my position, is the students are very honest with me. And so even though the meetings were recorded, the students that didn't show up for the meetings didn't watch the recordings either. So, and they said that, and which is fine. I did an end of the course survey, and that's where the students would, share that stuff with me. So that's one thing that I think is interesting and something to note on, is that even though we did these recordings, I think the students that just didn't show up because they just didn't care. Because again, they didn't watch the recordings afterwards or after the fact. For me and my class, we have an online textbook, and we also have all the chapters I've turned into PDF forms. So like I have a PDF form of chapter 1. So it's about 10, 12 pages in a PDF document. And that's what I did for the textbook. So instead of making them access the online textbook, which it's fairly simple, but again, when you're explaining everything online, that can be tough. So what I would do in our Google Classroom is I would post all the readings that we had for that day or for that meeting, and then that's where they could go for further information, which the students actually loved. They loved that they didn't have to access the online textbook. Even for the students that thought it was easy to access it, they liked the fact that I posted the readings right there in classroom and they had easy access to it.
Nice. And so that leads to another question. With doing stuff virtual, it's kind of the flip side of an earlier question. What are some things you're doing virtual that you're going to continue when you're back in person?
So I really personally like doing everything online in a way, meaning all their assignments were through Google Classroom. And because of that, it's so much easier to manage. So like last year, everything was paper, all the worksheets. So, I mean, I would go through so much paper, and the students would never want their work back because, again, it's health and it's not like math. So, or science where they are required to keep it. I don't require them to keep it. Most things I don't require them to keep, at least. Just mainly their notes, stuff that, like the worksheets they do, I don't require them to keep. So a lot of times when I would get worksheets back and I would pass them back to the students after I graded them, they would just put them in the recycling bin. And so, or they would say, I don't want it back. And so what would happen is there would be piles of papers on my desk from students who didn't want their work back until I can make the trip to the recycling bin. And that just it was just clutter and annoying. And so with doing everything online, it's so much cleaner. Not wasting paper. All the students had a laptop again, so they could access everything, and I could do any assignment that I did on paper online. And so the students would turn it in online. And I never really had this issue in the past, But this eliminates the issue of, wait, I turned it in and, I just lost it or something, because then there's proof. Because then I could show students that, hey, you click submit, but this is what you submitted, and it's a blank document, and they'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, you caught me. So it's so much easier for accountability reasons and for just the sake of clutter. Because even the students that would take their work back, they would just shove it in their backpack. And then I look in their backpack and I'm like, holy cow, it looks like a jungle in there. How do you know where things are at? And they're like, I don't, but this is where I just put all my work. So I think it's helped keep teachers more organized and students more organized doing the work online. And so the only thing that I require them to write are the notes from the lecture, because I do feel like when you write notes, you're more likely to remember them. So that is the only paper copies that I'll pass out are the notes. Other than that, all the work that we do is online, and I actually love that. And I think I'm going to stick to that because, again, everything's just so much organized, it's cleaner, and it's straightforward, and it holds the students accountable because I can see, the work that they're doing while they're doing it, one, but I can also see, all right, you said you turned it in, but there's nothing there. And I don't lose it. It's there forever. So there's no, because teachers make mistakes too. All right, I could easily, misplace an assignment too. So I really like the online submissions.
I think that's super interesting because, like, I think of everybody thinks like after this semester, everybody's like, I'm not everybody. That's very not everybody. A lot of people are saying, education needs to be updated, and we're still in this old method of doing things. And like ed tech is huge now. And I'm just thinking of like, I'm in the Bay. The organization I work for is kind of in the tech space / education, or just connected to tech. Because if you're in the Bay, tech is everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's automation of things. Like I feel like I'm always thinking about automation. Like how do you, for instance, you signed up for the calendar for the interview and it sent you a calendar invite and it sent you an email. Like I didn't do any of that. And so like, how does it work with teachers? Like if you're steadily doing this all day on paper, let me grade X, Y, Z, that's wrong, or that might be right. You put that into the computer can grade it for you. You don't have to go find the paper. It's already like in its digital folder, and it's so much more organized. And like, I think that's a huge thing that can help teachers out. One, save you guys hella time.
Yep.
So just a fun fact, Darien has been saying hella since 5th grade and is not, and when I moved to California, I was like, what's a California thing? Like, we've been saying this since like forever. But like, it definitely gives y'all so much time back. And we all know teachers spend way more time than what they do in the classroom. So to be able to have that, however many hours it takes to grade an assignment. So I imagine like the worksheets that are digital are being graded digital and you don't have to like go through and find them. And if not, that's something that we need to figure out for teachers. But just like that idea of everything being digital, and it also prepares students for college. So I can think of college of like, okay, we wrote papers, but a lot of stuff is really digital. Like you have to either go to the library to work on the internet or use your computer. Yeah. And so like, let's prepare students both earlier on to like, okay, well, you're not going to need these papers and pens and pencils and all those. Like, why are we still learning cursive? Like, we're not doing that. So that's I didn't even think about it. That's super interesting. Like, you're going to definitely keep everything digital. So will you let students have laptops in class? That's my question for you. Because I know how.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think so. And the reason why is because so my classroom, I was privileged enough to I have a Chromebook card in my classroom. So even before we did all of this, I had laptops for the students. Did we use them all the time? No, we didn't. But now I don't have my Chromebook card anymore because they needed every laptop they can get for the students. So each one has their own laptop. Yes, I'm going to let them use them in class. The laptops really weren't a big issue. And the reason why, because of the way my class was structured, I would always begin with, opening discussion with the students, dialogue. Then I'd get into my lecture for the day and they would take notes. And then afterwards, they would get on their laptops and do their assignment. That's what a typical day essentially would look like. Again, you have a classroom opener. We have a discussion, open discussion about anything health related or what's going on. Cool thing about health is you can talk about, current topics or current things that are going on in health. Then we get into the lecture. And a lot of times those current topics would tie into the lecture. So it'd be like an introduction, get into the lecture, talk to them. I never try to lecture for more than 30 minutes, 30 minutes being the longest because the high schoolers. I mean, it's hard to keep their attention span for 7 minutes, probably. And actually, studies have shown that it's hard to keep their attention span, even anyone's attention span, for longer than 7 minutes unless they're truly engaged. So I try to be, aware and cognizant of that. And then after that, they have basically an assignment to do after the lecture. And that's typically what we do. And they do that assignment online, on the computer. So they're always going to need a laptop, whether the students keep the laptops they have or whether I get my Chromebook cart back and I have my laptops in my room. And again, I just really like the fact that it's nice and clean, it's organized. They turn it in online. I can see when they turn it in, the time. So if they turn it in late, I can see that. And like you said, that was a lot of what we did in college. I mean, yeah, I don't recall a lot of writing, like pen and paper writing, pencil and paper writing. I don't recall a lot of that. Um, and the only time I recall that is, like I said, what I do if we were in class, and it wasn't required to take notes during lecture because it's college. But I remember that's the only time I would use, a pencil and paper and write, would be for the notes, and that's it. Other than that, all the assignments we did were online. So that's another thing that I see is that's where they're heading to begin with. And even if they don't go to college, because college isn't for everyone, technology is growing so much. So they're used to being on the computer too, and on their phones. And that's the cool thing about Classroom is a lot of the assignments they can do from their phones, and students love that. So, and you mentioned grading. I mainly did two types of assignments, either Google Forms. So those are, documents that students have to type their answers in. So it's just like an online worksheet essentially. Or then I would, excuse me, Google Docs. Sorry. So you probably know what a Google Form is actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do because you had one set up. So excuse me. I would do Google Forms and Google Docs. My bad. So the Google Docs would be like an online worksheet essentially. So they type their answer in it, underneath the question, just like a worksheet. My whole thing is I have the students type their answers in blue ink too, because that just helps me read. This helps me a lot. So any teachers out there watching, that helps a lot. It's easier on the eyes, or you pick your color. But they had to type all their responses in blue ink. And then I also did Google Forms, which were just multiple choice questions or true and false, and they grade themselves too. So that was even better. And then the students would get automatic feedback. So they would see what they got wrong and what the correct answer was. So the students would know their scores instantly, which I loved. And so I'm going to stick to that whole Google Form, Google Document, online worksheet dynamic. And then to be honest, there are some students, because, we have all types of students. And even though the majority of students are pretty tech savvy, there are some students that just couldn't figure out this online stuff. And so for those students, obviously I printed out the Google Docs for them and they would turn it in to me. So I still was a little flexible just to meet the needs of all students, because if there's a student that said, I'm bad at typing, all right, and it hurts my eyes to stare at this screen for this long, I was very understanding of that. And so I always had hard copies ready. And if I ran out of hard copies, I have a printer in my room, so I would just print them out for the students. And even when doing that, there was still a lot less paper traffic for me. So I was totally okay with doing that. So that's what my class is going to look like in the future still.
I mean, that's amazing. Like I'm just thinking of like the access and ease for you as a teacher to have all this stuff. And you said something you just said that really hit me was like students are already tech savvy, most of them. And so what I'm thinking like is the reluctance to move forward with tech more because teachers and older educators or people who just aren't tech savvy who are in the teaching space aren't ready to move to the upgraded technology because they're not ready. Because if students are already there, what's the back? I mean, obviously there's a lot of infrastructure that needs to go into it. Computers. I feel like this pandemic kind of like pushed everybody like y'all got to learn this because this is where everything's going. And we were saying we didn't write in college, but we were in college 5-6 years ago. So like 5-6 years forward from when we graduated, they're probably definitely like a lot of us probably definitely aren't using pen and paper like we probably were. And yes, phones. I forget how much students. I'll never forget this. I used to work. So everywhere I've worked since I graduated has been with students in some way. And I used to work at an after-school program where we taught film skills to kids, and we had them fill out like they were coming to our program and like some of them have to do their actual homework and like write essays and like,
Mhm.
oh, they're just typing on their phone. Like, you're typing on your phone, a paper? Like, to
Yeah.
me, that's just so unheard of on a Google Doc. But I'm like, I guess when you're so used to doing a thumb thing, you can type your whole
Yeah.
5-page paper on a Google Doc on your phone. I was just amazed at like, that's crazy to me, but like also that's super advanced. Like,
It's,
we think
it,
it's crazy. They think it's great for them, less technology, less lower costs for them to have to like have to
mhm.
buy computers. And then where I was, it was super, it wasn't super, but it was like it was Oakland, so like
Yeah.
there's the dynamic of incomes varies, but you know we have students from all walks of life, so like not having a computer was a very normal thing. Also in high school,
Yeah.
who just has a computer. So yeah, and think about us in high school, we had to go to a computer lab, like
Mhm.
Chromebook. Yeah.
I know, right?
We're going to the computer lab today to do whatever, and like now it's just Chrome. Like the high school I worked at, they're just Chromebooks everywhere, and like
I know.
I think
And
that's
actually, I
so.
don't even know. I gotta check and see how Fallon is now. I think they have Chromebooks. I'm not sure because even I remember the first middle school I was in, they had Macs, and I was like, holy cow! And I'm gonna be honest. The district I was in was an average district. All right, like O'Fallon was a better district than that. And I'm like, but these kids are getting Macs. I was like, we didn't get Macs at all. So, like you said, we had computer labs, and that was in 2015. I think that was the first school. That's when I did my student teaching. Yeah, and all the students, 6th through 8th grade, had Macs or a Chromebook at least, which I thought was wow.
That's
Um, yeah, like think about at Fulton. I don't even think. Yeah, we went to the computer lab. I mean, that it blows my mind. But I do think just to speak on a topic that you brought up. Um, one thing I think that's holding us back is that these students are just so used to doing things a certain way, if that makes sense. So they are used to the pen and paper type deal. So I do think this is a perfect time to make the shift to doing things, at least in my opinion, at least this is what I'm going to use it for, to kind of make that shift to doing more on the computer. Now, obviously, too, I do want to be aware of screen time and how much time they're spending on the screen. One thing that I thought would be an issue, which wasn't an issue, is they're on the computer or they're on their phones. Um, are they actually doing the work? And they were. I mean, I'd walk around, students are actually doing the work. I thought that was going to be a big setback with more technology and being more lenient on phone use and computer use. But no, they were actually doing the work. And I think part of it was because they won't admit it, but I think the majority of the students were just so happy to be back, to be honest. And so this semester for me has been great. Smaller classrooms, which is just a whole nother thing that I could go on a tangent about, and just the benefit of smaller classrooms and how, I would tell my colleagues all the time, other teachers, that for the first time, I actually feel like I'm truly teaching because I don't have 30 students in a room. And let's be honest, and any teacher will say this. This is one of the flaws of education in America, is the fact that we would have 30 plus students in a room at all different levels. And you can't expect there to be true education going on when that's the case. But now that there's smaller classes that are cut in half, the biggest class I had was 18 students, which I felt like a lot after going through, but my average class size was like 12 on each day, which was amazing. Um, Students were a lot more engaged. They listened a lot better, and I was talking with my principal and my AP, and they're like, so they asked me like, what's been the biggest change for you this year? And I said, I think the biggest change has actually been the lack of classroom management I've had to enforce, because with smaller classroom sizes, um, the management kind of works for itself. I mean, with only 10, 12 students in the classroom, those students that act out, they're quieter because they don't have a bigger audience to put on for. And I think part of it too is they're excited to be back. I had students that, and again, like I said, a lot of the students were open and honest with me. I had students that normally would be very disruptive and insubordinate in class, and they told me they were just happy to be back, and that kind of just changed their mindset on it. I've had students that admitted to not doing any work at home, but when they were in the classroom, they were so happy to be in the classroom that they would just sit there and listen to the teacher and listen to the teacher's rules without, putting on a show or putting on an act, which was it was kind of eye opening to see. So you have these students that admitted to being disruptive in the past, but that they're so excited to be back in the classroom environment that they are cherishing every second they have in the classroom. And I think that for itself speaks to how important it is for students to be back in the school environment, or at least have the choice to be back in the school environment. And I'm very big on that because I definitely do understand that some parents don't want their child going back to school. And that's another great thing I think that District 201 did is they didn't require students to go back. So actually we had A students, we had B students, and then we had full remote students, which is, I think it's great. So everyone got their option, they got their pick. They could either come back or they could stay at home. And it was the same for the teachers too. The teachers could be full remote teachers. So if they didn't feel comfortable going back, they didn't have to come back either. So there was no force. And, I think a lot of districts did something similar to that. But I know that's what my district did, and I think that was pretty spot on. I think that's the best you could do in this situation, just giving everyone a choice.
So that makes me think, when you did your hybrid classes and you had A students in the class, B students at home, and C students who weren't coming back to school, how was the setup? Like, did you have your computer now set up like basically distance so they can see you and you're teaching on the board and like everybody's learning the same? And I'm remembering now that your classes were like your meetings were not mandatory. So were there like not many students, BC students on listening when you were in class? Or how did that work when hybrid became the model?
So let's see. So when so at the beginning of the school year, when we start, I'll just give you the timeline. Beginning of the school year, what happened was I had a few meetings. I'd probably have like one meeting a week with the students just to check in on them. A lot of what I did though was similar to an online college class. Like I'm currently getting my online master's degree, or at least most of the classes are online. And so it would be a recording of the teacher explaining what to do, going through the material. That's how it was at first. So a lot of it was just me getting on Screencastify, which that is one good thing that came out of all this. I became more tech savvy, so I'm using all these teacher apps. So I would use Screencastify a lot and record myself talking and going over. I would share my screen and going over like what to do for today's assignment, or just going over the lecture, the slides for today's assignment for the students, and also post a PowerPoint for them in case there are people that move at their own pace. So I gave them so many options. And again, that's when we were full remote at the beginning. And then I would have a meeting a week. And since I'm fortunate enough to teach the same class, instead of doing it by class period, I would just have one meeting at one time with all my students. Did all of them show up? No. But I mean, I did that just to put it out there to give them some interaction with me, because it wasn't required, but I figured I still should do that. So then when we came back on our 8A B days, all the students that I had wanted to be at school. So it wasn't like I was doing 8A B day and remote students. So I was just doing 8A B days, if that makes sense. And so what I would do is I would post assignments. I think I would post 2 assignments at a time. And so if they'd be labeled, I don't know why my screen's going dark, they'd be labeled in class, at home assignment. And so my students were very good at, if it said in class when I would post it, I'd post everything the morning of, or have everything scheduled to post the morning of 2-day increments. If it said in class, they know, okay, that's an assignment we're doing in class. And again, the students knew my structure, so they knew, all right, so I don't have to stress out and worry about it. If it said at home, the students would know, all right, it's an 8A, I'm a B student, so I'm at home. This is an assignment that I should be doing at home. And that's how I worked when we were doing the 8A B day thing. And it worked out great, actually. Students loved it too. And they loved it. They had the opportunity to be able to get their work done in a way at their own pace. So that's what I did. So I had in-home, at-home assignments in 2-day increments. Then we went back to the synchronous, and then I would just post assignments. And for me, I'd give students 2 days to do each assignment. And all the assignments were mainly reading assignments, And then they would fill out either a Google Doc or a Google form afterwards over that reading. And then usually when we had our synchronous meetings, that's when I would go over the topic that we read about, if that makes sense.
Yes. So I noticed you're like worrying about the light. So if you want to fix the light, the way you do is just either close the window or turn the camera so that the window's not in the shot, and then it wouldn't flicker back and forth between dark and light.
You're so tech savvy. Wow, man.
Oh, I should have said that earlier. I was like, I don't want to like put anything up. Yeah, it's just a window because the computer's always, because it's not a steady thing. It's always trying to adapt to what the setting is. So it's like,
Oh, wow. Okay.
I see dark. So it should be good for now. But I was like, I don't know what he has on his wall, so I don't like, yo, turn the camera around. So.
Oh, no, it's cool. No, we're good.
So I have a lot. I'm only on page 2 of my questions. So you talked about Screencastify. Somebody else mentioned that as well. What other technologies are you using outside of Screencastify and Google for your classroom, virtual classrooms?
I mean, to be honest, that's really all I need. So Screencastify, because it does so much for me. Again, I can record myself talking. I can record myself going over PowerPoints. And then Google Classroom, it's just, obviously, you talk to any teacher, they know how amazing Google Classroom is. And the fact that Google Classroom, we can link it to our actual grade book. So all I have to do is put all the grades in Classroom and then, link them over or, switch them over, transfer them over, whatever you want to say. That has been amazing. What else have I used? I mean, yeah, Google Meets and Google Hangouts, so a lot of Google stuff. But that's about it. I haven't really done, like, there's Edpuzzle. I know that's one that teachers have used. There's a lot of other ones, but for me, Screencastify has served its purpose. So between that and Google Hangouts, Google Meets, Google Classroom, I'm pretty much taken care of. I'm set.
Nice. So basically, automation again is great for you.
Yeah.
And so when speaking of students, were you and students in particular, were you like, did you need to learn? Did you already know it? Was it easy? And for students, was it like, okay, we got to spend some time teaching them how to use it? Was that your role? Was that like a school administrative role? Like, let's do like a first week where students learn all this technology. Like, how did that work for you all?
I think, so specifically to my situation, since I teach mainly freshmen, I think that most of them got some introduction in middle school. Now, with that being said, I treated it as they didn't get any introduction, and I treated it as, I think the school sent out videos too. Actually, I know the school sent out videos too. But I also, did my part, and I made sure the students were fully aware. And so, like, in my Screencastify video, one of the first ones was me going through our classroom and going through a mock classroom of like all the assignments I already had posted and showing them how it would work and everything. So I made a video doing that. And like I said, I made a video. So all they have to do is watch the video and teaching them how to maneuver through Google Classroom and showing them what I expect. And then I did that. I also found YouTube videos that did the same thing. So just repetition, repetition, repetition. I kind of teach the same way I coach in a way, like just repetition, repetition, and giving the students multiple methods. So, hey, I made this video. You might not like this video just because I'm still learning how to be tech savvy, so it doesn't have all the glitz and the glam. Here's a YouTube video showing you the same exact thing that I'm telling you, but it's much cooler. And you might like the sound of this person's voice more, so you might listen better. Who knows? So I did a lot of that to begin with. And I explained in our virtual meetings too, face-to-face, my expectations and everything. So I did the most I could. And again, I treated it as they weren't getting this anywhere else, even though I'm sure other teachers were doing this. And I know the district administration sent out emails teaching the students how to do it too. But one thing that I think about in regards to emails and students, they don't look at them a lot. Or they just, open them, close them. They don't pay much attention to it. So that's why I thought if I did it as part of my class, they'd be more likely to look at it and actually pay attention.
Nice. And thinking of teachers, so this is called the Teachers Lounge. And the Teachers Lounge at schools, like I worked in a school for a year, and it was like Teachers Lounge where everybody went to get away from students and have their own space. What are you and other teachers doing to stay connected to kind of create a virtual Teachers Lounge?
So through we have a Google Hangout group with some of the teachers. Um, with So at least for me, so the Google Hangout group that I'm a part of, uh, there's a group at the school, an equity and inclusion group, and so there's teachers that communicate through that who are in that group. Um, for my department, we have a group, obviously, a group chat. And to be honest, the PE health department is a little different. We're always talking and communicating regardless. Before this whole COVID stuff, we were always hanging out a lot too. So I guess a lot more of it is just us talking through text. We're in our own wing of the school. If you remember how West is, you know where the gyms are. If you
Yeah.
get way back, so we have our own little wing of the school. So we're actually kind of quarantined off by ourselves, anyways. So a lot of times, we'll still come in. Even when we went back to full remote, I still came in. I mean, I did my meetings from my classroom from here, and the reason why is because I could come in, through the door by my classroom, by the gym, and everywhere, and I would have minimal interaction with people. Um, and actually, there'd be days when we were, full remote where I'd come in and I wouldn't see anyone. And there'd be people in the school, but I'm just in the D wing of the school where there's not a lot of teachers. Um, and so with that being said, we would come in, and so there'd be about three of us who would come in at a time, and we'd go in, the driver's ed office, and we would talk about what's going on with either the PE classes or the health classes or the driver's ed classes. Or if there are more people, we might meet in my classroom when we came in and just go over stuff. So we've been fortunate enough because our department isn't huge, like the English department, the math department. We're a smaller department, and we have basically our own section of the school. So we've actually been able to actually come in and be in the classroom. Again, when there's more than like three people, we'll meet like in either my classroom or the other health classroom, and sit distantly apart, but just talk about what's going on. So we've been fortunate enough to stay in contact for the most part,
Nice.
even with face-to-face contact too.
You actually answered a question I had about how are you, because I know you have a wife and you have two kids. So
Hmm.
how do y'all split your time with working? I don't know if your wife is working or not, or if she is, and like is she in the office, in the house, you're at the house, but you're coming to school to teach all the time. So that is that how you guys are working on like working remotely,
Hmm.
but kind of working together?
So my wife's a nurse, so yeah, she's definitely still working. So we've been blessed in that regards too. She did not lose her job. Um, Usually, our kids go to daycare. So my daughter's in preschool, and Wes is just in daycare. Uh, so usually, what'll happen is, like let's say the days where we're full remote, I would still come to the school to get grading done, and to be. Some people just need to be in that mindset. So I come to my classroom, and I'll have my laptop, I have my desktop, and that way I respond to students' emails like that. So I would still come to the school to be in that mindset, or I get work done for the next unit, next lesson. So when we went full remote around Thanksgiving, my kids were still going to daycare in preschool. So the day would be, I get up, drop them off, and then head on to the school. Um, which obviously it takes a lot because coming from O'Fallon to Belleville West, it's about a 25-minute drive. So that's why I make the time count while I'm at the school. But I'm just able to get so much more done while I'm at the school. And so on days like that, my wife would like it if she wasn't working because she'd get the house to herself and she could just chill. Or on days when my wife was working, obviously she would be at work. And so the kids were taken care of because I dropped them off at school. Then I came to work. Even though it was virtual teaching, I still want to make sure I was in my classroom and on standby for any student that needed to have a virtual meeting, or I would be in a position where I could respond to emails like that.
Gotcha. Okay. So some quick questions. What's been a bright moment for you this semester? What's like been like a highlight of your teaching this semester?
I'd say, and you're not the first person to ask me this, the biggest highlight for me would be, well, actually two now, because this is the first time I could answer this question with my end of the course survey being completed by the students. But the biggest highlight to begin with was the day we came back. and I got to actually meet the students, and I had a chance to show them my true self because, I think one reason why teachers are afraid to do this whole um, online thing or why they've been so reluctant. Part of the reason is because I think change is tough. So for the older teachers to change is tough. Another reason is because I think that the students are also not used to this. So that change is tough too. Even though they're used to technology, they're not used to affiliating technology with education. So they're kind of like, oh, even though we're tech savvy, we can use our computers and our phones to learn. So that they would like have that kind of realization. But at the end of the day, I think especially, and I said this before, for a teacher like me, I am at my best when it's face-to-face interaction. And so when I had a chance to, get back and have my students back in the classroom, I think that was probably the highlight. And the fact that when the students came back, they were eager to be back for the most part. So it wasn't like the whole typical first day of school. Hi guys, I'm Mr. Jacobs. What'd you guys do this summer? Blah blah blah. And students would just say what they did and not be excited. The students were excited too, and that energy was reciprocal. So I was giving off that energy, but they were giving off that energy too. And I think that was the first highlight. And again, it's kind of a weird highlight because it wasn't necessarily this lesson that went amazing. I think all the lessons went good. Um, but I think that was the first thing that stood out, just the excitement of being able to get back and just that anticipation the night before, because it was like the first day of school times 10. Because if you think about it, we've been out the classroom since, at that time, we went back in September. So from September all the way back to March 13th. All right. So, I mean, so we've been out the classroom that long. So as a teacher, you feel like, when it's your job, that's that's your purpose, that's your passion. You feel like a part of you's taken. So when you're able to get back in that situation, you feel whole again in a way. And so that was probably the first highlight. And then the second highlight, again, looking over the responses to the end of the course survey, at least for my class, and just seeing the positive feedback from the students. And even though this was such a, weird and different, unique semester, the fact that they still enjoyed the class and they enjoyed coming to school. And I think that's big. And the reason why I think that's big is because, again, these are 14, 15, 16-year-olds, all right? And as humans, even as adults, we don't respond well to change. And so when these students, adversity was thrown at them, change was thrown at them, ups and downs were thrown at them, and given the fact that that's just what we saw school related, who knows what they were dealing with at home. The fact that, they said that they had a great semester and they really enjoyed coming to school. They enjoyed coming to my class. I think that was a big up too. Just seeing the responses that I got from the students about school in general, and then just about the class in general too. Just the feedback I got was amazing to see, given this weird, wonky semester, and a semester where I felt like, since everything was kind of new, I wasn't at my best. But, one thing I learned in my past years of teaching is even when you feel like you're not at your best, you're still helping the students out, which again, that is what we're in it for. So that it was just good to be reminded of, hey, just because the semester didn't go the way I planned it and I had to do things differently, and I felt like it didn't go as well as it could have gone or has gone in years past, the students still got a lot out of it. So that's the second high point.
Nice. And on the flip side, what has been the biggest challenge for this semester?
I think, well, kind of what I said in the last one, just kind of going back and forth, the flip flop. Again, the rug being pulled underneath us, we were in this, good groove, A, B, and then we had to go back to full remote learning. I think that's been the biggest challenge, or one of the biggest challenges. I think a challenge, but one that myself and other teachers picked on quickly, was becoming more tech savvy, at least the ones that weren't tech savvy. I picked up on Screencastify pretty quickly. And then I also found out other things that Google Classroom does. So I was able to use it in ways more that I didn't in the past. So it was just a minor challenge, learning all the nuances of Google Classroom and using Screencastify. But those were minor challenges. I think the big challenge, again, would be inconsistency, going back and forth with remote then in person. And then also the challenge of there was a certain, population of students who just didn't care. Was it as big as normal? No, it was a smaller population, but there were still students that just didn't care. So just getting them motivated to do the work, and even when you're at home to do the work, I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I've had.
Gotcha. Okay. And so another thing that hit me was that amidst this pandemic, let's say back in March, April, May, June, July, August, there was more of a resurgence around social justice, mainly because of all the police killings of Black people.
Yep.
Um, did you at any point have to address this with your students, with your colleagues, about Black Lives Matter and everything that's happening in the world? And what did your school provide the resources for you to have those conversations?
Yeah, so our like I said, we have a racial equity group at the school. Um, but at least they started last year, um, and they were forming before even all this happened, actually. And they invited me to be in the group, and so they were already doing work prior to the pandemic. Um, what happened though is that group, with everything that has happened, the group has gone just from west to district level and getting support from the district office and the superintendents. And so there's been racial equity training put in place because of that we get PD hours for. Um, so that group is doing a lot within the school community at both schools because there's a group at both schools, East and West. As far as just talking about it with my students in the classroom, um, again, those are things that we've been able to have open discussion about. And so I enjoy hearing the students talk about it and what their perspective is. And the reason why I enjoy it is because again they have opinions, and they want a space to voice those opinions. Um, and at first, I remember 3, 4 years ago, however, when I was at Clayton, these middle schoolers were like, on both sides, whatever it was, they were very politically spoken. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Like when I was in middle school, all I cared about was basketball. Like, what, but you guys are talking about like all this stuff. And so at first I was kind of like, guys, just enjoy life. But now that I see that uh, these adolescents are paying more attention because of social media too to what's going on, I do think they need a space to talk about what's going on. And I do think no matter what your view is, you deserve a space to talk about it and have an open discussion. And so we've had discussions about, what's been going on, that I've facilitated and let the students talk. And I think they've been very, very beneficial. And I would say from all those discussions or by the end of all those discussions, people on both sides felt like they could kind of see better the perspective of the person on the other side of them, which in a way I think is all we can ask for. And that's all we can ask for in this country. And so instead of, one side looking at the other side as if they are complete evil and the other side doing the same, as long as we could get to a dialogue and get to a point where we say, hey, you know what, let's agree to disagree. And even though you believe that, I still respect you. I think that's when we will get back on course. Because with everything going on, I feel like, personally, I just feel like it's just a lot of hate. And it's just a lot of hate affiliated with essentially nothing. Like you'll see someone who, is wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt, and then someone automatically is like, oh God, I can't believe that person would wear that shirt. But it's like you're not taking the time to talk to that person, to get to know that person, or vice versa. And I wish we were in a situation where there would be more discussion going on. And even if someone doesn't believe or think the way you think, you still, if you're going to make an opinion on that person, you owe it to that person and yourself to at least get to know that person. Because I always say, it doesn't matter the lifestyle someone's living, what they support. You don't have the right to make a judgment based off of just what you see. And I always tell people, now, once you actually talk to someone and get to know them, if you don't like them, then that's fine. All right. Because you gave them the chance. You actually talked to them and you're like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't like this person because, again, they're just not a person that I like. But it's not because of their political views or whatnot. But we're just in a stage right now where it's more like, oh, you believe in this, so I don't like you. You don't even know me. So that's what I try to do in my classroom. And so I opened people to speak who believed in anything and everything. And so my classroom was that area for students like that. For all students, not students like that, all students to just kind of voice their opinions on what's going on in the world. Um, and it ranged from everything. I mean, it ranged from obviously the racial inequalities and the social justice. It ranged from just the stereotype of our Asian students because of, they call it the Chinese virus. So, we got to talk about that. We got to talk about LGBTQ, and we got to have people have an open discussion about that. And again, the main thing is we had people that were, like the Blue Lives Matter people, talk about their opinions too. And again, out of all of those discussions, it never got violent, hateful. It was really good to see adolescents, 14, 15, 16-year olds actually talk to each other and talk about opposing views and not do what they see on TV when they see politicians on TV just yelling at each other and belittling each other. So yeah, we did get to touch on a lot of that. The George Floyd stuff we talked about, um, all of that, and we even got to talk about stuff such as Kobe dying and Chadwick Boseman dying and topics like that. So that was one good thing about health is sometimes you could talk about what's going on in life because essentially you can relate anything that's going on in life to your health and wellness.
I was just about to ask, like, you're a health teacher, and all these, you saying all these things, like, oh my God, like as a student, have to go through from Kobe to Chadwick to COVID to Black Lives Matter to the election to the pandemic.
Mhm.
Like, these students are dealing with a lot in 1 year, and you're the health teacher. So what, like, outside of having discussions, is there anything else that you are doing in your class to help students with their mental health?
Yeah, actually there is, and it's funny because when I came to the district, they asked me, which was it was an honor. So I'm the only teacher in the no, I'm one of two teachers in the whole district that actually majored in health education. So typically health teachers are the PE teachers that have to teach health. So myself and the other health teacher here at West, we both majored in health education. So when I came to the district, and just because I had high accolades from my previous district, they asked me, "What do you think we should do with the curriculum?" The first thing I said is we need to make a bigger focus on mental and emotional health with everything that's going on. And they took that advice and they ran with it and they trusted me. And so I've actually adapted the curriculum to talk more about mental and emotional health and also healthy and safe relationships. Whereas before the curriculum handled a lot of well, here, this is how I'll explain it. Before, the curriculum was very similar to a science curriculum, where they talked a lot about like anatomy or biology. That's a lot of what the health was. And even when I think back to high school, I don't remember much from my health class. Shame on me being a health teacher, so I'm kind of a hypocrite. But I do remember a lot of, oh yeah, talking about the body, like bones and stuff. And so really, all that stuff's important, but at the same time, I try to structure it in a way of what can these students use right now. And one thing that I've noticed is the students' mental and emotional health is just gone down. Um, and when I first started teaching at West, so this was 3 years ago, suicide was the number three killer among adolescents 15 or individuals 15 to 24 years old. And then my second year teaching at West, just doing my research and making sure all my statistics are on par. Within that 1 year, I saw that suicide moved from number three to number two. So the number two killer of individuals 15 to 24 years old is suicide. And so knowing that, knowing what I know about mental health, and you got to remember what I said at the beginning, how I originally wanted to be a psychologist. I saw the great impact for mental and emotional health um, for all students. Um, because again, there's so much going on inside, and especially nowadays with the rise of social media, because I think social media and, using it is one of the main causes, one of the main drives for anxiety and depression. I think students need to learn more about it and learn how to cope with it. Um, and so what's been great is I've had students come to me and say, because of your class and what we learned, I was motivated to talk to my parents about going to a psychiatrist, and they are getting the treatment they need. And they said they would not have gotten that treatment. They would not have been motivated to do that if they did not, you know, hear what I had to say in my class and do the lessons that we did. So, I mean, that's been great to hear. So for me, health wise, personally, I try to make the shift from uh, more of a biological scientific approach. Again, like talking about cells and talking about the bones and anatomy and physiology, which don't get me wrong, all that's important. But students also have the option to take an anatomy and physiology class, in high school. So I try to focus more on mental and emotional health and then relationships, healthy relationships, because geez, man, at first when we were in high school, even I'm guilty of this. And I tell my students this, I would do these things and I'm like, man, I don't think this is healthy, but we would still do them because we weren't taught any better. I mean, we really didn't have classes on dating. And I thought, okay, well, you know what? Maybe this is just a high school thing. But then I noticed that when I got to college, I would see a lot of the same things. And then I noticed that even as an adult, I see a lot of the same things. So that's another thing that I emphasize on, just healthy and safe relationships. Um, and I tell students, look, it does not matter who you're dating. What's important is that the relationship is healthy and safe, and they respond very well to that because that's my biggest focus is you got to be in a healthy, safe relationship. That's it. But you also have to learn how to be in a healthy and safe relationship, which again, we weren't taught. Do you remember being taught that in high school? I don't.
No, and also I have stuff that was taught didn't apply to me anyway. So
We're right. So and so that's what I make the shift to. And again, and I love the fact that I have a lot of, I think it's just because of the subject I teach, but a lot of the LGBTQ students, they feel a lot comfortable talking to me about issues. I think it's just because of the subject I teach, though, and so that we talk about it. Um, but I actually love it because all students feel comfortable talking to me about these topics, which again, you go back to what was my end goal, being able to help students. So it's not just the athletes that feel comfortable talking to me, it's students of all demographics. The theater students or the students that are in the drama club, they feel comfortable talking to me. So that's one thing I love about the position I'm in, being able to help these students through all avenues of life, whether it's talking about personal issues that they're dealing with themselves or whether it's talking about world issues that are causing them stress, anxiety, and depression. Um, as we talked about before, your original question about talking about what's going on in life. So I get to kind of cover that all.
nice. So one, are you gonna have your healthy relationships courses listed online for everybody else to watch for the adults who didn't get this lesson in high school? So I agree with you, something that probably is needed for a lot of people. And I think it's great that you're able to kind of one, get the buy-in from your district and change or update the curriculum. Like, all right, these kids are dealing with mental stuff that we need to talk about. And I think that's super, I keep using the word super, but it's really amazing that you're able to do that and meet the needs of the students, not just continue to like do the same curriculum. That's like you said, anatomy, physiology. Like I took that class and biology in high school. I didn't need that out of my health class.
Right.
So it's great that you've been able to focus more on the mental space of the students.
Mm-hmm.
And thinking of the students in mental health, what about your mental health? What are you doing to keep yourself mentally healthy? Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, well, first and foremost, you asked, am I going to post that stuff online? What's funny? Every time I get observed by the AP, so the first year I got observed is I think during mental and emotional health, and the principal goes, I learned some stuff that I didn't know. I think you should post, some of the stuff that you teach online. And then the past 2 years, so this year and last year, the AP came around the same unit, which is relationships. And he was like, last year, he was like, that was good. There was a lot of stuff in there that I was like, man, do I do that in my marriage? So he said, you should definitely, you record yourself doing these sometimes. And then he observed me this year around the same time. And I told him, I was like, hey, it just happens to fall that, or the day you're coming to observe me falls on a similar lecture that we did that you observed me on last year. Has it changed a little? Yeah, due to COVID and everything, and like how I'm mixing lessons together. But he was like, no, I'd love to come in and sit on that lecture again so I can learn more. So it's funny because the assistant principals are like, yo, we're learning from your class. And again, it's this life stuff that they're learning, which goes to say that all right, you can never be too old to know it all because I don't even know it all. All right, and that's what I love about it because I'm constantly doing research too, trying to figure out more about healthy relationships, mental and emotional health. And then in that aspect, the district has been great, from my department chair all the way up to the superintendent. And I think one reason is because since I majored in health, they are very, very supportive. Because again, besides the other health teacher here, all the other health teachers are PE teachers that teach health part time. And not to knock on it, well, and the only reason I feel comfortable saying this is because when I talk to PE teachers, they don't want to teach health. My friends that I went to college with, the ones that minored in health but majored in PE, they didn't want to teach health. So I think it is safe to say that the majority of teachers that major in PE don't want to teach health. And so I was the first teacher to come in and say, "Oh, I love health and I want to teach health." And because of the feedback that my last district gave, Belleville District 201, they felt very confident in me being able to look at the curriculum and see where changes need to be made. So I have the full support of the district, which has been great. And I've even provided research on why I want to change it, but they're like, we don't need that. We trust you. But they're like, it's good that you provided that research. So yeah, having the support of the district has been great. And just to answer your question, yeah, I pondered the idea of doing some online stuff or posting my stuff online or whatever. I don't know. Maybe we'll see how next semester goes and see if I have time to do all that. But maybe I'll take my health education classroom virtually on my YouTube channel. We'll see. Who knows? You could be the driving force behind that, Shane. So if that does happen, I have to thank you in every video and say this video is brought to you by Shane Watson.
If you say so. I did miss something. I want to commend you on something you said, and that you said students of all walks of life. And for me specifically, as you know, I'm part of the LGBT community. Notice the flag on this person right here. As you being a Black male in a school, to be able to see you as someone who's able to talk to, that is open to hearing my issues or whoever's issues that focus on the LGBT community is huge. So I want to commend you on being that resource for students because I think that's amazing. And I don't know how I would have been in high school if I had that resource, but I know students today will probably, you might not realize, but they probably really, and they'll probably realize it later in life, like, yo, Darien Jacob, Mr. Jacobs was like a great resource for me. So I want to commend you on that. And you just said maybe next semester, and I want to talk to you, like, what are your hopes for next semester? Are there plans for you to go back into the school? Like, what does it look like for you in 2 weeks?
Yeah. So really quick, back to what you said. I was actually surprised when like LGBTQ students would come up to me, and I still don't know everything about it. So they teach me too. So that's another reason why I talk to them a lot because I'm like, I don't know much about this. So you gotta tell me like what your experiences are like. But they tell me that like they have teachers that like won't use their pronouns, or just will ignore the fact that they have certain requests. And so for me, the way I see it is, if a student has a request, just follow. It's that simple, right? That's my biggest thing. If a student says, um, like I've had students, I don't want to give away any names. Okay, so I'll use fake names. So I have a student whose, birth certificate name is Sarah, but they want to go by Lucas. Okay, that's totally fine with me as long as they tell me, And I tell students, hey, if that's you, just tell me. I don't know. So, because they don't change things on their ID. And so students will always tell me, and they say, you're one of the only teachers to, ask that. Because I say that on the first day. And so I think from day one, they feel comfortable and they know that, look, my job is as a teacher is to help any and every student who I come across, especially if they want my help. So it does not matter what you believe in or what you do or what type of lifestyle you live. I teach health. Okay. I have students that come and talk to me about drinking and vaping for advice. And again, the way I see it is my job is to help them. And these students aren't going to come to me if I'm ratting them out or telling on them. The student who's vaping and who wants to quit, they're not going to come to me for help if the first thing I do is call their parents and say, your student's vaping, because clearly they want to stop. After the lecture, they saw that, oh my God, this is harmful for my health. How can I stop? What are ways I can stop? And with everything, though, I do recommend that they talk to their parents about it, because obviously I'm not the parent. All right. So I always say, all right, vaping or you're drinking, you want to stop. Well, you should get your parents involved, but here are ways you can stop. Oh, you're bisexual. All right. Well, you can always come to me. You have my support. Have you talked to your parents about it? No, they're definitely afraid. Okay, well, I'm not going to tell your parents, but I do recommend that you talk to your parents about it. And I tell them, from my opinion, they should accept you for who you are. And if they don't, well, then you come back to me, and then I can have a chat with them. I'll reach out to them on your behalf. So I've done that for students, again, who are dealing with any issue. Again, it's not just students who are bisexual or students who are coming out. Um, I did it with a student who was African American and he had a white girlfriend. He was like, I don't know how to tell my parents. And I was like, hey, buddy, trust me. I know exactly how you should tell your parents about that. So it's just been being able to help the students, again, is my biggest thing, no matter what the student is dealing with. I kind of see it, my role, as almost being a lawyer, where you have to be, my job is to help students. So my job is not to bring personal beliefs into it. All right. So whatever a student needs help with, no matter what, that's what I'm here to do. And that's what the students need. And I think I tell them that too. And they're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of trust this teacher. So, I mean, that's been great. What was your second question? Sorry.
No, I realized I didn't give you space to respond to what I said, so that was my fault. Yes, trust is huge. Tap on that, double tap on that, whatever your phrase is to like, I approve or whatever. I like that statement. But my other question was, what are your hopes for next semester? Like, what are the plans? Are you guys going back in the classroom? Are you hybrid? Are you virtual? Like, what's look like for you in the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, so the plan is to go back. And so we are going to, I don't have the calendar in front of me, but January 4th, 5th, those are like the Teacher Institute days. So those are the days that we start back up, and then we prepare for the upcoming semester, essentially. And then I think the 6th, excuse me, sorry. I think the 6th through the 14th, maybe. So my days aren't perfect, but I think from Wednesday next week up until Wednesday the week after, we're going to be remote. Just to, give everyone time to, I guess, clear up anything from the holidays. I don't know. I think that's the rationale. But then I think Wednesday of the week after next, or Thursday of the week after next, we're going back to our AB schedule. Okay. So back to, for me, what I like, the AB schedule, seeing my students, or seeing a group of students every other day. Now, for me, one thing that changed is there has been an increase of students that have gone remote. So actually, instead of having 5 in-person classes, I have 4 in-person classes, and then I have 1 remote class. So that's one thing it's kind of a curveball for me, especially since for the past 3 years, I've been so used to having one planning period because I teach the same thing. So now I'm going to have to, prep for my AB days and for my remote students, which really isn't a big deal. It's just, look, that's why I'm a teacher. That's why I'm quote unquote a professional. So it's nothing I'm complaining about. It's something that I am going to do. And I actually volunteered to do it. I said, hey, I'd love to teach a remote class. And I actually, not even thinking, I was like, heck, I'll take a remote class, add it to my 5 classes. And they're like, well, we can't do that because then we have to pay you way more because I'd be taking off. But I was like, oh, I'd definitely love to do a remote class just to get some change in there. And because it's health. Again, either way, I'm teaching health. So that's what next semester is going to look like for me. So I have 4 in-person classes and 1 full remote class. So will it be different in the sense of usually all my classes are in line because it's the same class? The remote class is going to be moved at a different pace than the in-person classes, but it's definitely doable. It's something that I'll have no issues doing. It actually keeps me on my toes because then I get to plan a little differently. So good. And that's if everything stays the same and we don't get locked down again.
Got you. And just in case I don't know when this will be put out, we're speaking of the spring semester 2021.
Yeah.
And so I just want to quickly touch on, because you are a coach of girls lacrosse and girls basketball. What has been the situation with that? Was there a season? I don't remember when lacrosse falls in the season for high school. Was there a season last year? Was there a season this semester? Did basketball happen? How is all that working?
Yeah. So, and you're in California, so I don't know what they're doing in California sports wise, or even a lot of, like, I talk to you or I talk to any of our other friends, they're not really interested in high school sports because they're not high school coaches. But let's see. So last season for lacrosse is in the spring. So our season started in March, 2 weeks before the shutdown happened. And that was my first season as a head coach. So I was excited, and I had a pretty good team, at least for being a first year head coach. I was like, oh man, okay, let's get started. And it was to the point where I spent a lot of energy during basketball season focusing on lacrosse because I was just an assistant basketball coach. And we had that season canceled, which was a heartbreak to the players, especially the seniors, a heartbreak to the parents, and a heartbreak to myself and the other coaches. So that was very tough. And I won't get into that too much, but I will say it took a lot of, at least the one good thing that came from it is being able to show, these high schoolers what the true impact of being a part of a team is. Because even though we didn't have our season, we still stayed in touch. We still, we were still like a family, always talking to each other, checking on each other. I had constant mental health checks with my players, especially ones that I knew wanted it or needed it. So some more than others. So, I mean, that was one good thing that came out of it. We got to show the parents, the players, the community that, we were more than just lacrosse or a lacrosse team. And my purpose was more than just a coach. So that was, I guess, the one benefit that came out of it. Everything else sucked. And then basketball, a lot of, and you're in California, so you're not aware of this probably, unless you talk to unless you talk to Stephanie Copeland. I don't know if you talked to her yet. So she might have been able to inform me on what's going on with basketball in Illinois. Really cool thing. She coaches at O'Fallon. I coach at West, so we get to coach against each other, which is awesome. It's always fun to be able to coach against one of your good friends from high school, which it's a blessing too. But off of that, so for basketball in Illinois, a lot of controversy because no, our season has not started. While in Missouri, their season's going on with certain protocol. It's tough. And the reason why it's tough is because, again, you know me, I'm all about mental and emotional health. Just seeing the decline in mental and emotional health in our athletes, it's very sad. And it's very sad, especially, well, we're in the winter. And as you know, winter is the most depressing season of the year. And so, and basketball, you're a basketball player. Basketball is such a long season too. So not only are we taking basketball away, so we're taking their sport away during the most depressive time of the year, and it's the longest season because basketball goes from November to February. All right. So with all of those factors being put in, a lot of the basketball community throughout the state, they're dealing with some mental and emotional health problems because they lost their sport, or it seems like they're losing their sport. Now, the governor said that basketball won't start until the spring, so they're going to move it to a spring sport. But I don't know if that will even happen. As a basketball coach, I'm not banking on that. I have a feeling that the season's just going to get canceled. And then there's a lot of controversy because, all right, you move basketball to the spring. Well, in Illinois, they also move football to the spring. So you think about at least how many people we knew in high school that played basketball and football. Then you also have girls volleyball. They moved to the spring too. So just think about gym space and everything. So there's just been a lot of drama going around. Our athletic department, our athletic director and the assistant AD, they have a tough task at hand because they're just trying to essentially play Tetris with what's going to happen. And the reason why coaches, at least in Illinois, are so frustrated is because the people that are making the decisions really don't, they're not coaches. And so they don't know. Like, they don't know the harmful benefit or the harms of moving football and basketball season at the same time. At the same time that volleyball season is going on too. Because all these multi-sport athletes and even coaches that coach multi-sports, um, they're going to be put at risk or conflict. They're going to have to choose. So it's really been tough on the students. If we were just to focus on the students, that uncertainty has been very tough on them. And with my basketball players, they've been very, very upset. Um, for me personally, we're blessed because I think we only have like one or two seniors on our basketball team. So the majority of our program, they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors. So they have another year. So that's one thing that we've been blessed with. But there are players in the Chicago area. There are players. I know there was a boys basketball player from O'Fallon. They're transferring. They're leaving Illinois so they can play their sport. Which again, as a high school coach, you hate to see. You hate to see any school losing players because of something that an issue that could have been addressed. So that's just kind of where we're at. Again, it would be like, you think back to when you're in high school and you think back to us essentially losing you, Rose and Charles, and you guys going to play for like CBC or somewhere in Missouri. So you're not moving from O'Fallon. You're just going to a private school in Missouri because O'Fallon's not having basketball this year. Think about how much I would have hurt our program, you know, if we would have lost, players like you, Rose, CC, and whoever. I'm probably missing some names, but so that's what we're dealing with in Illinois. Players are upset, parents are upset, and my biggest thing is I'm just worried about, again, how these, especially the basketball players, are feeling right now, being in a winter season and it's already depressive and they're losing their sport.
So I kind of want to I definitely get all of this because it's like as a high school, students like focus on those, like this is my high, this is my season, we're going to state, or this is how I'm getting to college. For me, I see it more of like this is how some students are getting into college. But I also see the other side of like it's pandemic and we want to keep everybody safe. So like what is the line you play? And it more sucks that Missouri, which is right there, is just living their good old lives, which is not surprising.
It's not.
I feel like Missouri, for me, I feel like Missouri was like not doing anything because I see my friend who coaches in Missouri, like I'm like, y'all having games right now? Because okay. So it's like I see the difference between the way the Mississippi River is just dividing things for you guys. But I also see the side of like I imagine the hope of whoever's making decisions is to keep everybody safe. It's just in that moment, you also have to realize if things do get better in the spring, you have created a huge issue of 6-7 sports happening at the same time. Like that's going to be crazy. But I know like I'm also trying to realize like it is a sport, kids love sports, and the mental health of that, the mental advantage or benefit of that is like keeping kids mentally healthy. So I think it's an interesting dynamic that you guys are dealing with right now. And
yeah, no, it's definitely tough. And put it this way, hey, look, my job's easy. I don't have to make the decision, so I can just explain it from my point of view. I do think that being higher up and being the person to make that decision, it is a tough decision to make. It really is. So I'm not saying that because you don't want to be liable. Again, you don't want to be the governor or be the high school sports association that opens it up, and then there's an increase, and then people want to point a finger. All right, so it's not like we live in a society where we have high school sports and we say, all right, here's what's going to happen. We're not going to require you. It's going to be optional, and we're going to have certain protocol in place. We're going to limit fans, and everyone's going to have to wear a mask, and you're going to sign a waiver from the parent saying that you allow your kid to play during this pandemic. It's not like we could do that, because even if we did that, if a parent's child got sick, you know how they are. They still would try to find someone to blame and someone to be liable. So I do get the fact that they're trying to be safe. And and who knows, maybe if I was in that situation, maybe I would be doing the same thing. I don't know. I'm just glad I'm not in that situation and I'm where I'm at and I don't have to make the decision. Um, but again, it is tough to see right across the river them playing and us not playing, and then us losing players across the river because of the area that we're in. Um, but I mean, we'll see how it goes. Um, they moved my lacrosse season to the summer, so I mean that sucks. So yeah, I mean Illinois did a complete shift with everything. So I mean we're going to see how everything plays out. But the biggest thing, like I said, what we did last year is we kind of get a chance to show the players, the parents, the community that we're more than just coaches. And so that we serve a greater impact to the students' lives and just coaching them. And so we've been very active with staying in touch with them through our group meets and meeting with them over Zoom calls or Google Hangout calls or Google Meet calls, or whatever. So we still have had team meetings and stuff. And so I do think that the community is seeing that, okay, they're doing more than just coaching, and it's bigger than, you hear that phrase, it's bigger than basketball, or it's more than just lacrosse. I think now we get a chance to show the community that it is that, and that as coaches, we are valuable and we're not just here to try to win games. We're actually here to actually shape the individuals that we coach into productive citizens, get them ready for society.
Yeah, I think a lot of your students or players, student athletes,
Mm-hmm.
student athletes will understand as when they're adults, just the impact of sports. I had this conversation with somebody else the other day that, coaches are kind of they serve a very important purpose in the student athlete's life because they're able to reach a student outside of academics, which is like this book stuff you're spitting at students, where it's like, all right, we're teaching you how to get into a routine and teach you how hard work pays off and teamwork and all that type of stuff. And I think that's something I didn't realize until I was an adult. Like, okay, I might not have liked you as a coach, but I do understand what you were doing and how that has now impacted me. And like now I know, like, oh, if I want to reach this result, I need to do this. I need to start here. Or I need to, like, those workout routines that you have to do. Like, okay, I know what's going to get results, and I know what I need to do my homework. I have to have whatever GPA to play sports. Well, if I want to do this in life, I need to make sure I have this set up first, because this and 2 + 3 don't equal 4. It needs to be 5. So I need to do the right things.
Mm-hmm.
I see the impact and the importance of coaches, and I think it's great that you guys are showing. You're not just like, all right, season's over, y'all go do the hell y'all want. Like, you're like, all right, how you doing? How's your mental health? How can we, like, that's great that you're still in communication with the students to show, one, we're here for you outside of sports. Two, showing your parents and the community that coaches aren't just coaches and former athletes. So that's really great for you guys to be doing that.
It is. And I think, and obviously I'm biased, but I think some of the best life lessons are taught through sports and through coaches. For me, too, you learn so much about life through sports, about hard work and never giving up and being a competitor. I think the biggest lesson I learned, if you remember in 5th grade when I got cut, all the way back to 5th grade when I got cut.
Like, what? Darien got cut? He's playing on 3 different summer league teams.
That was the impetus for that. I got cut, and so instead of complaining, my parents were like, "You got to get better." So what did they do? They took me to St. Louis, and I think that's what drove it. Because clearly, because of my height, at least I was tall at the time, but I wasn't destined to be tall, so I wasn't supposed to be a basketball player. But just the fact of getting cut and having something that I wanted and I didn't get it, it really showed a side of me, even at a young age, that like, all right, this is attainable. I just need to get better. And obviously, you saw that the hard work, it lasted all the way up into early high school, and then everyone just got so much taller, and then there's nothing I can do. So that's when I started to wane off. But I think that was probably the first lesson I learned through sports. So it wasn't that I got cut and my parents were all upset and they felt sorry for me. They were like, "Hey, you got to get better, and we'll take you across the river, have you practice with some teams, and you'll come back and hopefully you'll be better."
It doesn't look terrible. Yes, that's what we'll do. We'll come back and you will just dominate these kids. Y'all understand? Darren came back and was just like, first of all, was like 5'6", 5'7" in 5th grade, and we're all like 5'1", and you see the center, and Darren's bringing the ball off the court and just like bullying kids. And I'm like, what?
What did this kid do? And so, but to be honest, none of that would have happened if I didn't get cut. Yeah. And so that's the first lesson I And then you learn other lessons too, again. And I think the biggest one you learn through sports is just resiliency, being able to bounce back. And so even though we're not playing sports currently right now, I think our student athletes are still learning how to be resilient, being able to bounce back because yeah, they're being knocked down right now, but we're helping them get back up and letting them know that, hey, again, we are more than just a basketball team and we care more about X's and O's. Okay. We care about you guys personally and we're here to help you. So, and that's what I said. And the students asked me, both lacrosse and basketball, they told me, well, what are we going to do if we don't have a season? And I said to my basketball players, I said, I'm still going to be your coach. And I'm still going to be checking in on you, making sure your grades are good. I'm still going to be making sure you're doing your workouts. So don't think that you're not going to hear from me. And then for lacrosse, since I'm the head coach, I told my coaches, we're still going to coach. I mean, even if we have a season or not, all right, because that's our job. The word is coach, but again, there's so much more to that word than just coaching. So we still have a job to do, whether there's a season or not. So that's just the way I see it. Um, it's definitely sad, but again, we're looking for the bright spots, definitely in this situation.
Yeah. So we're going to transition from my questions. I have some Instagram submitted questions that I'm going to ask you, and then some very quick, like one word answer questions. But to get to these answer questions that people submitted to me that they want to ask teachers, first question is, are you okay?
Yes. And part of the reason why I think is because of my awareness with mental and emotional health, if that makes sense. So I'm able to, like, if I'm slipping into a state where I'm not okay, I'm more aware of it and I'm able to catch it. And I'm able to do things that will help me from falling into that quote unquote funk. Um, I think the biggest thing for me is, again, trying to stick as closely to my routine as possible. So, waking up, doing a light workout before I drop my kids off, then coming to the school, whether I need to be here or not. That keeps me in the right mindset. It keeps me active. It doesn't get me in a position where I'm sitting down and actually thinking about, man, what's going on? You know what I mean? So it keeps me moving, keeps me motivated, and it still instills that sense of purpose in me. And that's one thing I talk about with my students is that sense of purpose. Um, I don't think people understand that once you lose that sense of purpose, how things can go from you being okay to you being completely in a depressive state. So I think purpose is very important. So just maintaining that sense of purpose has helped me to stay okay. And I say okay, not great because yeah, things could be better, but definitely okay.
Got you. I think it's great that you're able to identify when your mental health is either sinking and know how to get back up to where you're going. And routine definitely helps. How has the pandemic widened the opportunity gap in your community?
Oh man, I think probably similar to how it has across the board. I mean, just people losing jobs, which is it's very upsetting. So let's just talk about jobs for a second. Again, myself and my wife have been blessed to not lose their job, and obviously, since I live in the same town as my parents and see them all the time, my dad didn't lose his job, so uh, it hasn't affected me personally, job wise, but just seeing individuals who have lost their job, just through reductions, either because of companies closing or because companies had to make cuts. Um, it's pretty sad, and it's pretty sad. Again, being in a community like O'Fallon, where you go to the Y, or you kind of get to know people that work at certain spots. And so then when you start to go back to these places, these restaurants, and then, the same hostess that you would see is not working there anymore, or the same person at the Y who checks you in is not working there anymore because they had to let go. The same librarian's not there. Um, you definitely notice that. But again, when people are losing jobs, that definitely hurts I mean, the opportunity and the economic gap. And I think that's not just here in O'Fallon or here in Illinois. That's all over. So that's the first thing you're going to see. And I guess this is in no particular order, but that's the first thing I'll talk about is job loss. Um, and then let's talk about education since I'm a teacher. I think a lot of issues that we were dealing with in regard to education, educational inequalities. I think that gap has kind of widened in a way. And what I mean by that is doing remote learning. It's fascinating because the students that do good in remote learning are the students that were going to do well either way. All right, they're self-driven. They can follow directions. They're the ones that actually watch the lectures that I post. So they were going to get A's whether remote or whether remote, virtual, or whether in person. Um, I think there's a subset of students that they weren't going to do well. And this is just to be honest. Again, they just weren't motivated. We went to high school with students like this too. You could think of students that we went to high school with that just didn't care. All right. So they don't care whether it's virtual learning or if it's in-person learning. I think the group of students that's really getting hurt is those students on the fence um, through this, virtual learning. Students that if they were at school in the school environment, they'd be able to be in a position where they have a better chance of succeeding and thriving. But I think because they're at home, and a lot of these students, because they can't fully focus in their house, that's hurting them. And you got to think about it. I mean, again, I'm glad I talk to students and get perspective because I just assume every student's house is like mine or like yours, that they even have a house. But some of these kids go back to 2-bedroom apartments with 3 or 4 siblings. And when they're told to do work at home, they're more worried about helping out their younger siblings, or they're more worried about trying to find a part-time job to support their family. And so I think that educational gap has widened. And this is just my opinion and just from what I've seen because of this virtual learning. And again, I think there's 3 main categories. You have the students that are going to thrive no matter what. You have the students that are in the middle, they're on the fence and they can go either way. And when I say they can go either way, again, they're more likely to go, in that direction of striving with having that support from the student or from the teachers. But those students that can go either way could still go the opposite way, the negative way, even at school. But I do think that gap has widened and more students have fallen over to the negative side. And then you have the students again that didn't care about school at all to begin with, whether it is virtual or in person. And so I think we're really hurting and doing a disservice to the students that are on that fence, and that we could kind of get to come over to the right side of the fence or whatever, or the positive side of the fence. So, I mean, job wise and educationally, I think those have been 2 areas that have been hit hard in regards to creating an achievement gap.
Yeah, I definitely see. Like the org I work for, we help students find an affordable path to and through college. And I've had to interview some students and just learning their stories of like, they're in college, but like, do they go home? What's the learning situation like at home? It's very similar to high school. Like now I'm at home all day, or like now forever. And what is my family situation? What is my personal situation? Who am I taking care of now? Do I need to get a job? And so that's super like affecting. Like I don't know specifically how you're if you had to work whatever in high school, because I'm not you, but I have an idea that we neither one of us were like forced to get a job in high school.
Nope.
Like
Yeah, we're the same. Yeah.
Like I got a job because I wanted money, and so like I understand like the privilege I had, and that like I would imagine I'd be good if we went virtual. I'd probably be like, I don't want to be on camera, but like I'm not in that. I wouldn't have been in that in the fence on the fence category because I have a great support system in my parents and my family, and so I think it's great you're recognizing not everybody has that, and so being able to recognize that and identify that, and know that those students might need a little extra help is great.
Exactly.
And so another question is, how can individuals help? Like, how can I, Shane, help teachers? Or how can Joe Schmo on the street help teachers?
Well, Shane, you're doing it right now. I mean, you're using basically your profession and speaking with teachers, coaches, counselors, individuals who work in a school. You're doing your part just by doing this, which is great because you're doing your job. So you get to do your job and you get to help teachers, therefore help students, help adolescents all across America. So continue doing what you're doing. That's how you can help. And then how other people can help. I think just one thing that's funny, I think just being more supportive of teachers, and don't get me wrong, I receive, at least personally, a tremendous amount of support. So that's not what I mean. I guess more perspective, I guess, which has been one thing that I think parents have understood. Um, when parents they're dealing with their own student in the capacity that, or their own child in the capacity that we interact with them in, they kind of see the light. And so it's funny. I've had parents that have said, "Oh yeah, my child would never do that. Oh, they're a great kid." And then like after remote learning, they're like, "Okay, I see what you were talking about." So this, I think having that perspective is just big, and again, that's something that people can do without even doing much. Just having that perspective of what, you know, teachers actually do, and I hope individuals who aren't teachers, whether they're parents or whether they're just individuals in other professions, they do see the benefit of teachers. Because again, as teachers, as educators, again, we're here to teach and educate, but we're also here to guide the student through life. And so we have a lot of hats to put on. At least if you're a quality educator, you have a lot of hats to put on, and you do more than just interact with the students within the 55 minutes that you have them for. And I tell students this all the time. I say I love teaching, I love education, but I think true education occurs outside of the 55 minutes I have you for. And so that's why I always have my door open, and I always try to create a space for students just to have open and honest talks, discussion. Um, I think that's important. So again, just people realizing that we do more than just teach. And I think the last thing would be, there are people out there that think that the majority of teachers are enjoying not being at school. And I think for those people, I want them to understand that we don't enjoy this, and we don't enjoy being at our house and not being able to see our students. Uh, I do know there's some professions that are jealous. They think, oh, these teachers don't get to do anything and they still get paid. I would ask, if you're someone who thinks that, or someone who thinks that, um, just kindly remind them that we chose to teach to be with students, not to be on a computer screen and do this remote learning. And it sucks. It really does. I mean, let me be honest. Is it easier posting the assignments online? Yes, but I don't want easy. All right. I want to deal with the students. I want to help the students. I want to know like what they're going through. I don't just want to give them assignments, have them do it, complete it, and turn it in. That's not what teaching is. And so I think that way, and I'm sure the majority of teachers across the country feel that way too. So for the people that think we're just sitting around doing nothing and we're happy with it, we're not. We're not sitting around doing nothing, and no, we are definitely not happy with it at all.
I think you just said so much that will help a lot of people. I just want to like cut that soundbite right there. It's like, now y'all just listen to this part. If you listen to anything Darien says in this whole interview, listen to this. So I'm like trying to remember it, to go back when I edit this, to cut that and put that out. So people like, that's why I should watch Darien's interview. And so the next few, just like some quick responses, like what is the best tool? And I feel like you've talked about this multiple times. So what's the best tool you've used to support virtual learning?
I would say, well, okay, if one word answer, Screencastify, again, because that just has done wonders. It's in a way flawless, because again, I record myself talking like this. I record my screen giving instructions, telling the students completely what to do. Because I'll type the directions for the assignment. And again, you have those students who can read the directions and say, okay, not a problem. And they don't even need to watch my videos. But you definitely have students that are like, I need to see the video and hear explanation. And that has been probably the biggest tool for me. Screencastify, if I had to use one word.
Got it. And have your expenses gone up? Well, you're not working at home, so this doesn't apply to you. Do you ever feel that your health was disregarded when you had to go back to school?
No, I think, and I think that's the reason why too is because, again, for our district, teachers weren't required. I think they have been pretty much on point. So we had teachers who did not want to come back, and they just did remote learning. So obviously we had a subset of students who were all remote. So they were the ones doing the all remote students. I wanted to come back, and all the precautions that were put in place, which I won't go into, but I mean, our district did amazing precautions on how to keep people distanced and whatnot. I didn't feel like my health was at risk. And the one thing that I was worried about was students wearing their mask, because we had issues in the past years having students wear their IDs. So we're like, there's no way we're going to have students wear masks. The students were completely on board, and I think it's because they understood if they weren't wearing their mask, they could ruin it for everyone and send us all back home. So the students that did come to school, at least me personally, I never had any mask issues. So again, one word answer: no, I don't feel like my health was personally at risk. No.
Cool. And what has been the upside of online learning that couldn't happen in a school setting?
One of the upsides is just valuing being in the classroom, and again, that face-to-face interaction, and then being able to have others recognize that again. Yeah, at a certain point, can teaching be done online? Yeah, like in college, there's a bunch of online courses and online degrees you can get. But for adolescents, so for primary and secondary education, not higher level education, I don't think we could ever be fully replaced by computers, which is one thing that in college I was worried about happening. When I was taking my online classes, I was like, well, geez, I'm doing all this online. But again, when you're in college, you're different. You're in a different mindset. You're actually paying to be there, so you're a little bit more driven. I think one good thing from all this is that I don't think, at least in the near future, that we'll ever get to the point where high school, middle school, elementary school is replaced by virtual learning fully, and we're out of jobs.
Got you. And the last question for this section, the next section is really quick. How has COVID affected your family? So I know your wife's a nurse, your parents live nearby. So how have things changed for you all?
So when the lockdowns first started, I didn't see my parents, and again, they live right around the corner from me. I moved back to O'Fallon, and they stayed in O'Fallon. Part of the reason is because we were moving back with our family, or else they would have been out of there too, like all of our other friends' parents and your parents. But they stayed back because I stayed back and to help with the family. So when it first started, it was tough not seeing them, especially when they lived right around the corner. And it was very tough because my wife was still going. I was still working, but from home. But my wife was still going to work, and my kids, their daycare closed. So at first, it was very tough because I was at home with my kids, both my kids, which is very hectic. And my wife's a lot more fun with them at this age than I am. So it was probably just straight up hell for them, being stuck at home with dad, not being able to go to school. And again, that's when the lockdowns were heavily enforced, or in place at least. So we couldn't even go to the park or anything. So that was tough for myself and for my kids. I got a little better as things opened up and we got to see my parents more and go over there again. And then, it's been up and down. Luckily, I've been fortunate enough I haven't contracted it, I haven't gotten it. My wife hasn't gotten it. My kids haven't gotten it. And both of my parents and my sisters, they haven't gotten it either. And I would tell you, there have been times where I was sick as a dog and I definitely thought I had it, and I got tested multiple times and my whole family did, and we didn't have it. We were negative. So we have not been personally impacted by COVID as far as getting the disease. And that, I guess, family wise, yes. I've known some people, some of our friends from high school got it, but they're fine now. But the disease hasn't hit our family. Thank God. Knock on wood.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the fun questions. These are legit. Probably most of these can be one-word answers. What was your favorite subject in high school or in school in general?
Oh God. Okay, so one word, man. You know I talk, so I gotta explain. I would
English, math, science, biology, anatomy, health, PE, lunch isn't really a subject, but you get where I'm going.
I would say at first it was health, okay,
Okay.
Which inspired me to be a health teacher. And one reason it was health, I will say, is because the health teacher I had, she was the full-time health teacher. So she's like what I do. All she did was teach health I don't really want to use names, but that's the health teacher I had. Um, and so I think her approach was a little different, like my approach is. So health was probably one of my favorites. The thing that sucks about health is you take it freshman year. So I just remember it being my favorite at the time. And the thing that sucks is I can't recall fully everything from it. I would have to say at the end, when it's all said and done, my favorite class was probably marketing with Coach Gibson, actually. So, and the reason why is because that's when I kind of got introduced to marketing, and that's when my interest for marketing kind of sparked. And that actually followed me into college when I did real estate. And I was like, man, why am I so passionate for marketing? Why am I so good at this? And I think it's because of that class, because I was very interested in it. So I'd have to say, again, two, health and marketing, but I guess marketing I can remember more because I took it, I think, senior year. Um,
Were
yeah,
we
I'd
in
have to.
class together?
No, we weren't in that class together because I remember. Were you? No, because it was Quan was in it with me. Yeah,
Okay.
Quan was in it. Marketing, and now that I'm thinking that there are some other classes that stood out, but marketing is probably the one I'll go with because again, that's where my interest in marketing started, and that's probably why I became so good at it. So I got
Uh,
to give a shout out to that class.
was the health teacher also a coach?
No, she was not.
Okay, I don't know who you're talking about then. Okay,
Oh, I mean, I'll say it. I mean, I have no issues. It was Miss Mueller. So not a lot of people had her, I don't think.
yeah, I definitely did not have her.
Yeah.
Favorite dish to cook or favorite restaurant in O'Fallon?
All right, so favorite. Let's go favorite restaurant in O'Fallon, and it comes in phases. But right now, Flamenco's the place. It's a pizza place. It might be newer. So, because you know what, I don't remember it in high school at all. I think it's newer. Flamenco's the place. Great pizza. Uh, Local business. Definitely go check them out if you live in the O'Fallon area.
Where's it located in O'Fallon?
It's on Highway 50, I think. Yeah,
Okay,
Highway 50.
how 50 runs
Oh,
forever.
no, so it's kind of by all right. So it's kind of by Walgreens. There's these like I don't know when's the last time you've been to O'Fallon, so it's hard to explain. Um,
Oh, Walgreens by kind of by Gators ish.
yeah, okay, yeah. So you go in west on 50, so you pass Gators. You remember
Past
there's
S2.
yeah, okay. So you pass there, and
Okay,
then once you pass there, there's like buildings. It's in one of those building complexes though. It's the light after Kaz Azteca
so it's
after
like
the
right
Walgreens.
behind Walgreens.
Similar. That's the
Okay,
best way I can explain it.
and before you get to Sonic.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It's
Okay,
between
I know
Walgreens.
exactly where it is.
Yeah. There
Yeah,
we go.
I have never heard of this place, so
I,
maybe
I, I think it was. I don't think it was there when we were in high school.
maybe someday when I return to O'Fallon, I'll have to go to Flamenco's. Okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
man. Definitely got to let me know when you're there too.
yeah,
I'll pay for it.
I'll be there next week. Actually, no.
Okay.
If you weren't doing what you're doing now professionally, what would you be doing?
So okay. So let's just say like I went through the whole path. So I got my education degree. Um, I would be doing, I'd be, so I'm in the Guard, obviously. And so being in the National Guard, yes, it's part time military, but we have full time positions out there, whether they're AGR positions, which I know I'm saying a lot of words out there, but they're active Guard reserve positions, which is a full time position, or full time technician positions. Um, I'd be doing that. That'd be my job. I'd be working on base. And I'd also be doing real estate because in college I did real estate and there was a stint after college for a few years where I did real estate and I really loved it. So I'd be a realtor part time and I'd be working in the Guard full
Okay.
time.
Best gift you've ever given or received?
Oh God, man. Oh, you know what? It's funny. I was watching an interview the other day, and this question was asked, and I was like, I hope I never get asked this question because I can't think. All right, best
And
gift.
you cannot say your kids, and you cannot say an engagement ring, because I feel like those are literally the two questions that I've asked somebody else, and they gave me both those answers. Like those are the answers you can't give.
Okay, best gift. God, man. How about we go received? Oh, why'd you do this, man? I can't. Uh, I, I love giving gifts and I love receiving gifts. My wife says I'm a great gift receiver. I'm really trying to think. Oh man,
I mean, your birthday just passed,
it
Christmas
did.
just passed. So happy belated birthday. I don't think I told you.
Yeah, no, I did. No, you're 100% right. So that's why I'm even more upset. What did I even get for my birthday? God, I have so much. I have everything I really want. And so it sounds cliche, but I love getting money or gift cards. I
Hey,
mean, I do. And personally, oh, you want to know what though? All right. So I love getting gift cards or money like anyone else because since I'm an adult and I'm in a position to get everything I want, there's not really gifts that I get that I don't already have, or you know what I mean. But my brother-in-law last Christmas he got me Wooden on Leadership, so a book by John Wooden, the phenomenal basketball coach. Um, that's probably one of the best books I've ever read. Wooden on Leadership. If you are a coach of any sort, I highly recommend that book. And then the year before, same brother-in-law, he was a basketball player growing up too, so he understands my love for coaching. He got me 11 Rings by Phil Jackson. Those are probably two of the best books that I've read recently, and that I'm actually reading again. So second time reading them, and they were both gifts. So I'll go with those. So
okay.
shout out to Patrick Reynolds for those two amazing books.
Patrick Reynolds has
Yes,
some good books.
who is also a teacher, by the way. So shout out to him again.
Okay, maybe. Oh, you need to tell Patrick I need to talk to him. Uh,
Okay, then tell him
one vegetable for the rest of your life. What would it be if you could only eat one?
one vegetable. Okay. And it's one. All right, I'm just gonna go with is it tomato a vegetable?
No, it's a fruit.
God, look, and I'm the health teacher. I should know that. Hey, let's edit. Hey, edit that part out for me, so people
Okay.
don't know I did it. I'm gonna go. I'm kidding. I'm gonna go with probably carrots. I like carrots. And
Okay. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
yeah, I hate the one word because
It's serious or no? Will you eat pineapple on pizza, yes or
oh,
no?
will I eat it? Yes, I will.
Okay,
I
we'll
will eat
leave it at that. Most extreme thing you've ever done?
it. What can I say without getting myself in in trouble? No. Let's see. Most extreme, so like intentionally extreme, or
Either way.
hmm. The thing is, I'm not really a risk taker. At least not now. So I'd have to think back to maybe college or high school. Um, all right, so if you post this, take this part out. I remember one time in college, I was at a party,
Stop.
and
We're not gonna go there. We're not doing college parties. Next question, please.
well, no, it nothing bad. I just no. Okay, seriously though, it wasn't anything bad. The party got busted, and I'm pretty sure I was of age because I just wanted to leave, but they wouldn't let anyone leave, and I was like, I don't care. So I had to be of age, um, but they would not open the door. It was at an apartment complex, and so I was like, well, skip this. So we're on the fifth floor, and I'm like, I really don't care. So I get on the deck and I like scale the building, and I just go down. Yeah, I know. I scale, and it's in the middle of winter, so it was slippery too. Um, and again, it wasn't to avoid the ticket because I was like, just open the door. And again, I think I had to be 21 at the time because I didn't care about getting a ticket or not. I wasn't worried. And they were like, no, we're not going to open the door. So after 45 minutes of sitting in a dark apartment with a bunch of people and a bunch of shh, 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 I just go out the screen and I just kind of scale the building and I leave.
Okay, yeah, that's very extreme. Okay.
It
Uh,
is.
no comment. Any mantra? Is there a mantra that you live by?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few. One that two that I've been telling my players. Uh, First one, no excuses. I just no, it's simple, no excuses. Um, and I love mantras and I use them a lot. They kind of come in cycles, I guess. But the ones I'm using right now are no excuses because I mean, you could come up with an excuse for anything, as you know. But if you're supposed to do something, if you're passionate about something, you're not going to make an excuse. You're going to get out and do it, and you're going to put in the work to do it. So again, these are mantras that I use, especially. Well, I use it with my students too. No excuses. And then another one that I use with both my students and my athletes: lead, follow, or get out the way. Right? It's that simple, and they understand. I explained it to them, so they understand it. But lead, follow, get out the way. Either you're going to be a leader, or you're going to be a follower, and you have to be a good follower. And if you're not going to be a good leader or a good follower, then you need to get out the way, because people are moving forward. Those leaders are moving forward. Those leaders are leading the people they follow forward. And if you're just on the road in the way, you're going to get ran over. So lead, follow, or get out the way. And then one that I started using too is C plus F plus U equals S, which is conditioning plus fundamentals plus unity equals success. So.
Okay. What guilty pleasure do you spend your money on? Sorry, no. What is something you spend too much money on?
I'm trying to think recently, what do I spend a lot of money on? Probably recently something lacrosse balls and lacrosse sticks. Which I don't know why. One, because I coach girls lacrosse, so all the sticks I'm getting are girl sticks. And they can be pretty pricey, but probably just so I can let players borrow them. And let players borrow balls too when to take home to practice. So a lot of money for my team, which I guess I could just use the money we have in our team account, but I use my own money. So I think that right now that's probably the thing that I spend money on the most.
Okay. You're going to regurgitate the answer, but I'm going to ask you anyway. What book would you recommend?
Well, I think to coaches, I would recommend Wooden on Leadership for sure. And 11 Rings by Phil Jackson. And Inside Out Coaching is another book that I would recommend. So Inside Out Coaching, these are for coaches. For people in the educational field, What is Education by Philip Jackson, not the same Phil Jackson that coached the Lakers, but What is Education is a good book for educators. Pablo Freire, Pedagogy of the Oppressed, is another intriguing book by for educators. I think. So I recommend those books for educators. Also, I'd recommend for educators again a book by Antonia Randolph called The Wrong Kind of Different, and it basically goes into basically how teachers have certain stereotypes among minority groups and schools that are basically hidden biases. And to sum it up, it explains how teachers across the country will have a bigger interest in teaching Hispanic, Latino Americans. They see them more as diverse than as opposed to teaching in African American communities, because as the title suggests, they consider them the wrong kind of different. So that's actually a good book that I read that drew some insight to my teaching and kind of how to be aware of some hidden biases. And then just as a parent, as a dad, the book that I'm reading now is called The Vanishing American Adult by Senator Ben Sasse of Nebraska. So I think all of those books have different dynamics and different they're written by different types of authors, so it kind of fits anyone from any background. So those are books again. So
okay,
that
cool.
I recommend.
We're down 3 minutes left for this interview, so we're going to run the last couple questions fairly quickly. What is your favorite movie?
Okay, so my favorite movie right now, and this is strictly because of my kids. I've watched Frozen 1 and Frozen 2 so many damn times because of this pandemic.
When you said my kids are like, you have two daughters, it's going to be Frozen.
Yeah. Well, I have one daughter, but she runs the house. So
yeah, you have a daughter and a son.
My son's laid back. I would have to say probably Frozen right now. I mean, My daughter's got me hooked on those both of them.
Okay. Best vacation you've ever taken? Where'd you go?
I would have to say it's so lame, but we had a lot of fun, and it was since it was our last time going out before we had Charlie. When my wife and I went to Branson, Missouri. It sounds so lame, but we just decided, all right, we're gonna have a kid soon. We got to go somewhere, and then we just decided, all right, let's just go to Branson because it's kind of close, and it was a good time, and everyone there was really nice, surprisingly.
I went to Branson in 2014 or 15. It was a good time. I remember seeing some very off-color billboards, but other than that, it was. I mean, if you look at, it's actually my profile picture on Facebook. It's me playing shuffleboard. I fell in love with shuffleboard in Branson because why I have no idea.
Yeah,
But
it's awesome. Yeah, it's such a weird place. I would say I guess that's one of my favorite vacations. Other than that, I would have to go back to AAU basketball, which I guess you can't consider a vacation. So we'll go with Branson. So that was a true vacation.
what is important for those who don't know you personally to know about you?
Um, I guess that like for someone who's watching this, just to give background and insight, that I truly enjoy helping other people. I truly enjoy seeing other people succeed. Um, and honestly, I'm someone who I love to see other people succeed because in a way that motivates me. Whether it's right or wrong, whether it's kind of a perfectionist mentality, um, who knows? But I love seeing that, and um, I get very happy, especially seeing people that I grew up with succeed too. So like you and some of our other friends, when I see people out there killing it in their career fields, again, that gives me a lot more inspiration to kill it in mine. And again, we got to pull inspiration from wherever we can. So if it takes me seeing other successful people to inspire me, I'll take it because it keeps me motivated. It keeps me inspired. So uh, again, I just love to see others succeed, and I love to help other people succeed too, whether they're my students, whether they're my peers. It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Got it. Is there anything else you want to add before we conclude this interview?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me. I'm going to wrap it up quick because my computer's dying. Definitely. So if I cut out, sorry. Thanks for having me. Means a lot. And I'm so excited to see you doing this. Um, so, I mean, shout out to you for doing your thing again. And a quick shout out to you and some of our other friends from high school, um, especially teaching. Ever since I became a teacher, I've realized how privileged I've been, um, and people like you, other African Americans or Black people that we grew up with, so like you, Cal Burton, John Bowie. Just shout out to you guys and your families, because I thought that was the norm, because that's how we were raised. But being a teacher and seeing different households and seeing that it isn't the norm and that not everyone is blessed to have a strong support system like that we had, I really do think that works wonders and it goes such a long way. So again, shout out to you and your family. Give a special shout out to some of our former teammates, Kyle Burton, John Bowie, um, and just anyone else that we hung around because obviously we hung out with the right people because we're where we are now. And we didn't hang out with the wrong crowd, or at least we didn't hang out with the wrong crowd for too long or too much. I'll say that because we're all able to become successful in each of our respective careers, and I love to see it. I really do. So again, shout out to you guys, everyone that we hung around that's killing it in their careers.
Thank you. So I'll wrap this up with thank you, Darien, for sitting down and just interview with me. Thank you for all the work you do for your students and the students in your community, your players, and the families you work with. Because at the end of the day, whatever you do to help your students is helping their families. You're
Mhm.
also helping the world as a whole because the people you're helping, the students you're helping to become better adults will become adults in the world, and your impact is going to influence them to do great things. I always say our teachers are our superheroes. We should thank them. So once again, Darien, I want to say thank you for sitting down for this interview and thank you for everything that you do for our students.
All right. Well, again, Shane, thanks for having me. Keep doing this. This is awesome. And you definitely let me know when you're in St. Louis next.
Will do.
Yeah. So, and I hope everything's going well with you, man. So seriously, I'll shoot you a text and see how all these other interviews are going because I'm interested in the work you're doing now. So I'm gonna be checking in a lot more.
All right. Well, I look forward to your text messages and I hope you have a great day.
All right, you too. I'm signing off.
See you.
See ya.